most of us. But again, given the significance of the topic, really think this is extremely important, and we hope it is worth your time. So, because again, today is not just about what happened at COP29. There were a lot of positive developments, but let's also take this opportunity to highlight how do we actually move forward from this point to some of the very key milestones that we'll be seeing in the upcoming days, ranging from the updates and the national determined contributions to taking the way forward to COP30 as well. And just again, before we start, let me just thank and congratulate the Pakistan's Ministry of Climate Change and Environmental Coordination for their endless efforts in providing all the support and developing a very strong case, presenting a very strong case for climate action, not just only in Pakistan, but perhaps the case of whole South Asia as well. And definitely also to the COP presidency for pushing the key decisions, declarations, and signings, and again, bringing the whole world together to address the single or the common issue of the climate change. I believe the colleagues from SDPI would still remember that after the last COP, we actually hosted SDPI's post-COP event, and we actually received this call from the Embassy of Azerbaijan that the ambassador actually wants to join and listen to the discussions, which actually showed how proactively they have been engaged in the whole decision since the day one. So once again, thank you so much. The way today's program is scheduled is that we'll initially start with a plenary session that would be on what is the reflections from COP29, and then we'll also be doing a roundtable discussion with key experts. They'll highlight how do we actually move forward from this point to the revisions of NDCs, key climate policies that are coming up, what needs to go into that, and then eventually to what leads to COP30 as well. So, but before we start, let me invite Dr. Shafkat Munir, the Deputy Executive Director of Sustainable Development Policy Institute, for his welcome address. Dr. Shafkat, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ubaid. Good morning, everyone. Honorable Ms. Rubina Khurshid Alam, Coordinator to Prime Minister on Climate Change, Ambassador Khazar Farhadov, Honorable Justice Jawad Hassan, Honorable Justice Adnan Chaudhary, Dr. Abid Suleri, ladies and gentlemen. Before the COP, we have been having several sessions here in Islamabad and across the world. In the pre-COP and during COP, many of us were part of the discussions, side events in the COP, and even now we are here for reflection. A person like me who have been following COP from Bali to Baku here, my impression is that always there are tense negotiations going on across the table. Many propositions come up. Sometimes some propositions are accepted with modifications or without modification. And many a time, always there are vested interests taking place in the negotiations. Always there could not be a good news that all deals are good. But sometimes there are kind of, in Baku, even during the negotiation, what I felt, sometimes the negotiations were like the cool breeze of Caspian. And people were thinking that maybe the negotiation will collapse. But later on, all of a sudden, you know, the sun rises and another hope started coming up. Coming my discussion here, reflection from the COP is that, COP29 particularly, when we were going there, we were expecting that this would have been a climate finance COP. And we were expecting if something would not happen concrete, at least it will be referred for a full-fledged kind of action at the COP30. But what happens after that cool breeze and some sort of heat coming up in the negotiation? A weak deal came up. The weak deal was that instead of a 1.3 trillion a year, what we got 300 million, and that too in 10 years until 2035. So which means what we were expecting earlier, that at the COP30, we will be more jubilant and we will be having propositions that could be convincing to the international players and negotiators that at least they should contribute in this side. That would have died down at the moment that until next 10 years, we have been having at least on this mantra that whatever we have got it here is enough. So even if there is a weak deal, I would say even a weak deal is better than a bad deal. So with this note, I think we have to start here for the COP30 with the hopes that whatever is coming up, we will plan up to have our share in it from Pakistan. If we are not ready as a country, or the countries who will be benefiting from these kind of finance, if they are not prepared, then certainly the argument would be there that you cannot consume 300 million, or you cannot access 300 million through a technical process. How come you can claim 1.3 trillion or more? So these are now the testing time started from Baku to Pakistan and onwards to Belem now, that we have a policy proposition with us, technical expertise with us, so that we can claim what we want for our future generation. So it is not just a climate finance, but already COP28 has given us some reflection out of the whole processes, that is the stock take. We have to look at that. Even at Bali framework, we have agreed that there will be technology transfer. That would have ultimately made the community people to prepare against the bad impacts of climate change. But even that technology transfer part is still hanging behind. So these kind of, all the COP come with the new commitment. New NCQG came this time, and we will be after that. So every time there is a kind of a new dimension coming up. Paris Agreement 2015 is a milestone which we have to follow in terms of our climate targets. So if we are not matching that, everything will be following up under the Paris Agreement until we have been following these negotiations. So negotiation take place. This is not the last time that they have ended. They are actually COP29 ended to start for COP30. So that's why there is a hope that while we will be working together, we would have in a better position to pitch our case. I will not take much time. I know there are expertise sessions. They will speak about each and everything. Thank you very much and welcome once again.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Shafkat, for setting the scene. I'm really glad. Let's go ahead with the first plenary session. We're very honored to have been joined by Madam Rumina Khurshid Alam, the Coordinator to Prime Minister on Climate Change Environmental Coordination. Thank you, ma'am, for joining us. We'll also have His Excellency Ambassador Khazar Farhadov, Ambassador of Republic of Azerbaijan to the Islamic Republic of Pakistan. Dr. Abid Qayyum Suleri, Executive Director of SDPR and the member of COP29 International Advisory Committee. And we're also very pleased to have with us Justice Jawad Hassan from Lahore High Court and Justice Adnan Chaudhary from Sindh High Court. So firstly, let me invite Dr. Abid Qayyum Suleri for reflections at COP29. So over to you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Ubaid and Shafkat. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, let me thank all of you for joining us here on this Saturday morning, and especially to the coordinator to Prime Minister, Ma'am Rumina Khurshid, who flew back from COP16 that was being held in Riyadh only this morning. And that shows her dedication, that despite her early morning flight, she is with us. I'm also thankful to two honorable justices from Lahore High Court and Sindh High Court who has spared time and joined us. And we really feel that if we talk of climate justice at a global stage, we need to work closely with the judiciary in Pakistan. These are the personalities who have supported environment and climate cause in Pakistan through their respective decrees and through their respective judgments. So thank you very much, both of you, for being here. And I'll also thank Ambassador Khazar for being here, the host country. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we need to, I think, while we'll be discussing COP outcome today, a couple of things that I think important to set the scene. The first thing first is, and I have been saying it after every COP, let me repeat it once again. There is no good or bad COP. Good and bad COP, they are in real life, but in multilateral negotiations, all the COPs are equal. So COP 29 was as good or as bad as the previous 28 COPs were, and we should keep this thing in mind. The second, the success of any multilateral negotiation, or for that matter, any negotiation, can be measured when everyone leaves the venue equally unhappy. And this happened with the COP 29 as well. It was not a one-sided COP. And of course, it was a multilateral negotiation where you had 200 plus delegates trying to convince each other, 200 plus parties trying to convince each other. And of course, there can be certain positive or negative things that we can pick upon. But one thing that I would like to point out in Pakistan, I think the COP 29's output is being measured from a very Western lens. And I also wrote in my piece last Sunday that in such negotiations, there is a science, there is data, and there is geopolitics. And I think that somehow this geopolitics that is actually trying to put shadows on the outcomes of COP 29. The first thing first, Azerbaijan, I think we must appreciate that it actually delivered the COP in less than 8 months. So usually the host governments, in that case, for example, Australia, the most probable host of COP 31, knows 2.5 years in advance that it would be hosting its next COP. Azerbaijan became a host of this COP only because it was difficult for this COP to be held in Eastern Europe, where it had to be taken place due to Russia-Ukraine war. And that's why a neutral venue was chosen where all parties could come. And despite this small notice and little time, I being a member of International Advisory Committee working closely with the COP presidency, I know that the number of online meetings and in-person meetings which were being held to make this COP success, those were never unprecedented. The second important thing that we need to keep in mind that this COP started with the victory announcement of President Donald Trump, who had already announced that one of the first things that he would do after taking charge of office, that he will once again withdraw from Paris Agreement. Now, US withdrawing from Paris Agreement would have huge repercussions on whatever outcome that we discuss. And that has actually dampened the expectation from the start. The second important thing that we need to keep in mind that it's not only US. EU was quite reluctant to make any commitment. I know, again, being a sort of quasi insider, that this number, 250 to $300 billion number, was there from the very start of COP. And presidency has been trying to push EU that they should declare this number in the very beginning so that the negotiation can take place. But the EU was reluctant to announce it, and they deliberately wanted to push it to the last days of the COP so that there would be very little time for developing countries to negotiate on it. Had this number been on table in the first couple of days of COP, negotiators, they could have negotiated well in the next 10, 12 days to discuss it. But of course, presidency can only facilitate, presidency cannot announce or make a decision on behalf of parties. The fourth important thing that I want to highlight here, again, in my informal discussion with EU negotiators, they were reluctant of, one of the reasons they were reluctant, and there was no bad intention from their perspective, as I said, everyone has to be equally unhappy. They could foresee the electoral, due to election, some changes in EU governments. So we know that there would be a snap election in Germany in February, March, where perhaps the next government may not be very environment friendly. We have seen the French Prime Minister losing a vote of confidence, and now again one can expect, depending upon how the coalition works, slightly right to the center government in France as well. We have also seen the Romanian election being declared null and void by the court. So most of these geopolitical things, I think they had their effect on COP outputs. Another important thing that I want to highlight here, that in the second week, there was this G20 summit in Brazil. Now, COP dates, they are actually announced at least a year in advance. Now, having a G20 summit parallel to COP, to me, it was, it also, even if it was a coincidence, I don't, even if it was no malintention involved in it, but it actually, again, when all the G20 leadership was in Brazil and not attending the COP, that gives wrong signals and wrong messages. And my very final point, most of you would have seen the negotiator from our neighboring country speaking very emotionally against the deal in the last day. India never objected the COP outcome in writing. So they had consented with the outcome. Otherwise, there could have been no outcome at all. So they gave their consensus and consent on the outcome, but they bashed very strongly in the final plenary. So that is, I think, somehow that tells you the type of geopolitical this influence on COP. Having said it, I think while we regret that international community lost an important opportunity to take it further from COP28 to whatever was decided there, to make some quantum leap, and the result could have been better. But at least on three fronts, there is some development. First is on NCQGs, and again, the technical experts, they would be telling you about NCQGs. My own feel is that now is the time we need to take into account, both in our NDCs as well as in our demand, the inflation impact when we talk of climate finance. So the climate finance that was committed in 2009, $100 billion per year, if you take the impact of US inflation there, that $100 billion from 2009 to 2022, when it was actually actualized, it had already got reduced to about $65 billion. So now we are talking of $300 billion by 2035, and we take US 15 years inflation average 2.75 in effect. It would mean that this number would get reduced by at least 25% by the time it actually gets materialized. So while now the focus of multilateral climate negotiation has shifted away from climate and from centigrades and from degrees to billions and trillions of dollars, I think we need strong financial negotiators in our climate negotiation who can take into effect the impact of inflation, who can take into impact of interest rate, and who can take into effect the how to avoid double accounting and greenwashing in the commitments. That is very important. Otherwise, these numbers they will not matter anything to anyone. But yes, developing countries, they sacrificed and they reverted from their demand of $1.3 trillion. And by the way, this number was not any sacred number that came through some whimsical these divine revelation. This number was given by an independent high-level financial expert group that was appointed by United Nations on the day 3 of the COP, that the world required $1.3 trillion to counter the impact of climate change. So it was not my number or Azerbaijan numbers or America's number. That was the independent high-level expert group number. And we have seen $300 billion commitment there. We have also seen visible progress on Article 6, the carbon credit. All of us, we know that CBAM would be a challenge to our exports. And at least this progress on Article 6, internationally accepted transferable mitigation outcomes, that is something we should be capitalizing upon, and we should work to improve on it. And finally, operationalization of loss and damage fund, where we still don't have tangible money to distribute. But these three, they are, I think, important achievements from COP29. Now, to conclude, and I know Justice Jawad would be presenting in his keynote address, highlighting some of the aspects. I think now we are at a point where we clearly know that US would withdraw. Now, we have three options. The first option with the world is that all of us, we follow the suit of United States and let the humanity perish and let the humanity suffer on the hands of extreme heats and extreme floods and uncertainty and unpredictability. The second option that we have is to do nothing and wait until next US elections. And again, if there is a change of command, US again joins the Paris Agreement and start our work on it and stay at status quo. And the third and the sensible approach is that US withdrawal has actually left some leadership vacuum. And now it is up to G77 plus China. Now it's up to EU. Now it's up to other countries to fill in that vacuum through their higher ambitions, through their higher commitments, and try to fill in that gap so that the humanity and the world doesn't feel the consequences of a world which is very rapidly being turned into a unipolar world. And I'm referring to President Trump's recent announcement whereby he threatened BRICS countries of imposing 100% tariff if they tried to bring an alternative to US dollar as a reserve currency. So I think the mere fact, and I'll conclude here, for me, the success of COP is in the fact that COP is held every year. If this forum was not there, there was no place to raise our concerns. There was no place to achieve the inches that we have achieved, and there were no place to learn from our successes and failure and to plan better. So this forum in itself has a value. We are thankful to Azerbaijan for holding it at a short notice, and we are looking forward to Brazil. Now, those of you who feel that COP is not delivering, our United Nations is not delivering, they should keep in mind the fate of SARC. Most of us were frustrated that SARC is not delivering, but once the SARC became dysfunctional, we lost the opportunity whereby our South Asian heads of governments and head of states, they could actually at least agree to disagree on many things. So now everyone is trying to do whatever they could do. So I think we should cherish the value of this multilateralism, and we should try to strengthen it. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Abed, for giving a both technical and a political reflection on COP29. So, I mean, look, there are no easy solutions when we talk about the climate change. A lot of factors, the money is there, the technology is there. So I think Dr. Abid has already highlighted some of very key developments that happened at COP29, ranging from the new NCQG to the operationalization of Article 6 of the Paris Agreement. And those of you who are interested in reading the detailed response of our best API colleagues felt at the COP29, you can always scan this QR code. This will be displayed again after the session ends as well, and you can download the document and read what SDPI's thesis provides on that. But for now, appreciating the role of Azerbaijan, let me invite His Excellency Ambassador Khazar Farhadov to the podium for his reflections and comments and suggestions. Thank you so much for joining us. Over.
Assalamu alaikum, ladies and gentlemen. Her Excellency, Madam Romina Khurshid Alam, Coordinator to PM on Climate Change and Environmental Coordination. Esteemed Justice Jawad Hassan from Lahore High Court, and Justice Adnan Chaudhry from Sindh High Court. Esteemed Dr. Abid Sulevi, Executive Director of Sustainable Development Policy Institute. First of all, I would like to highly appreciate brotherly Pakistan's full support to Azerbaijan to ensure the COP29 one of the successful in its history. His Excellency Prime Minister Muhammad Shahbaz Sharif, accompanied by senior officials, made successful visit to Baku, Azerbaijan on 11th and 13th November 2024 to participate in the World Leaders Climate Action Summit of the COP29, and also on the sidelines of the World Leaders Climate Action Summit. Prime Minister of Pakistan and President of Azerbaijan held the productive bilateral meeting as well as we are brotherly countries. Less than a year ago, Azerbaijan had been honored to host COP29 with the full support of international community. In a very short period of the preparation of such international magnificent event, Azerbaijan has conducted all the necessary preparations for the successfully holding of COP29. It is common acknowledgement globally that Baku COP has become one of the greatest COP in the history. Azerbaijan have been recognized by all guests for the excellent organization of COP29, which was attended with 80 head of states and governments and more than 76,000 participants. Despite a large-scale and organized campaign of blackmail and slander, Azerbaijan managed to achieve historical results in the climate negotiations, which my brother Dr. Abid also mentioned, which came from geopolicy. Declaring 2024 in Azerbaijan Green World Solidarity Year, Azerbaijan honestly brokered and ensured all opportunities for impartial negotiations. The needs of developing countries and small island developing countries, as well as the least developed countries, which bear the brunt of climate change and face existential threats, have been taken into account in the outcome of the successful carried out process. Solidarity was achieved in supporting the peoples and regions suffering from environmental problems, especially worsened by colonial rule. Azerbaijan spared no effort to create a bridge between developed and developing countries, as a result of which the Baku breakthrough took place in the history of the COP. The Loss and Damage Fund has started operating at full capacity in Baku COP. Full functionality of long-awaited Article 1 in the carbon market was also achieved, being another milestone in entire COP history. Most importantly, the Baku Finance Goal sets new global target to channel $1.3 trillion of climate finance to developing countries by 2035 it is also a significant uplift. This includes a new co-finance goal of $300 billion that triples the previous $100 billion target. Parallel to delivering a balanced package of negotiation priorities, the COP29 presidency's action agenda called on a wider group of stakeholders to contribute to global climate action. The action agenda initiatives confront some of the most pressing problems, shine a light on forgotten priorities, offer unique solutions based on the experiences and perspective of the host, and reinforce coherence and COP-to-COP continuity. These initiatives were designed in an inclusive and transparent process in consultation with all stakeholders. They serve to complement existing initiatives and bring new creative approaches to climate challenges. Together, the initiatives will support the implementation of ambitious climate action. I will mention the initiatives and declarations. It is COP2's joint appeal, Baku Initiative for Climate Finance, Investment and Trade Dialogue, Energy Pledge and Declarations, COP29 Global Energy Storage and Grids Pledge, COP29 Declaration on Green Digital Action, COP29 Hydrogen Declaration, Baku Initiative on Human Development for Climate Resilience, Climate and Health Continuity Coalition, Reducing Methane from Organic Waste Declaration, Baku Harmonia Climate Initiatives for Farmers, COP29 MAP Declaration for Resilient and Healthy Cities, COP29 Declaration on Enhanced Action in Tourism, Declaration on Water for Climate Action. We are thankful to Pakistan joining, endorsing majority of these declarations and initiatives. In addition to these action agenda initiatives, the COP29 presidency made progress in several priorities areas for ambitious climate action. These include advancing transparency and securing funding for loss and damage. In addition to presidency-led initiatives, parties and other stakeholders stepped up and showed leadership with their own commitments. Being a turning point in climate diplomacy and having positive impact on future global climate action and becoming to be known as the Baku Breakthrough COP29 became also a victor of multilateralism. Thank you very much for the attention.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Indeed, the efforts of again Azerbaijan in managing these outcomes is extremely substantial. And thank you for mentioning the initiatives and declarations around the green and climate action. So with this, let me move towards the keynote address by Justice Jawad Hassan from Lahore High Court. Thank you so much for joining us. Yeah, if you can just join us at the podium. Thank you.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Good morning. His Excellency, the Ambassador, Justice Adnan Chaudhary, the Minister, the Coordinator Romina, Dr. Abdul Suleri. I have a virtue that we were next door speaking on IMF and IFC's World Bank's thing, and when they called me up to speak here, I could not say no to them. And then I brought a judge from the Sindh High Court, Adnan Chaudhary, which is very important because when Pakistan suffered the worst due to climate change, Sindh province is the one which suffered. 8.2 million people suffered. And I couldn't say no to them by knowing I'll speak from my heart today on the history of public international law, which I've been teaching, is that when in COP3 in 1997, Tony Blair was to be participating as the Prime Minister of England. And he said in his speech that when I was asked to speak on environment, at that time, environment was not something very important for the world. And I couldn't say no to them because my children said, Baba, sir, Dad, do go. That concerns our future generation. Because that is something in 97, the COP3 was so important that Kyoto Protocol was made there. That is what the Kyoto Protocol was made in 97. That was COP3. Reason for speaking here today, which I has heard from Mr. Shafkat Saab and Abdul Suleri Saab, I've been hearing early morning on Saturday, good, bad, again and again. And then I've been hearing something again. So what makes me start my speech is that the principle in English common law, which I always use, is called curate egg. It's morning and we're talking about eggs now. Curate egg is a principle with English law, which you say some part is good and some part is bad. That's the principle which came out, as I recently quoted in a judgment, says that the Lord went to the inn and he asked for an egg, and pastor gave an egg. He said, how is my Lord if it's a bad egg? Lord replied, some parts are good, comma, some parts are bad. The concept is, I'll say good things only today, and I'll share with you the journey of a good thing. That would be that what is the outcome of COP? It's all because of us. The ambassador is sitting with us, and I knew it when we were the first judges in the world, and only first time. I'll acquaint you with the UN history of the environment. When we were asked to speak at COP28 in Dubai, Justice Shah and myself, I spoke on climate finance in December last year. And when we came back, and we thought that the world found out two judges speaking on COP. This year, the global judges network, all the judges came to COP also. And what we realized is, this time we only spoke about the goals to achieve, which we have achieved. The last year when Pakistan had a tremendous outcome and now much better was that Pakistan became the member of Loss and Damage Fund. I'll look at the positive part of last year COP. This time we have to celebrate in a bigger way. A bigger way would be that when we came back, the effort of the excellent COP under the leadership of the ambassador and with the Romina and the whole team and the secretary is that I'll give you the dates. When I came back, it was February. I met the ambassador at the club, as you remember, and we said we need to prepare for COP29. And the ambassador, in half an hour, notice came and we made some kind of targets to achieve. Thereafter, on the 28th of May, this year, the minister, the Romina, was at the Republic Day of the Azerbaijan, where they made again a goal to do. Then June 2024, this year, I must say that we had the conference on climate justice by the Supreme Court of Pakistan. Justice Shah and Justice Asha Malik and myself, we were speaking on the issue how the judiciary of Pakistan is the most prominent judiciary in the world by doing lots of things first time. First country to give the right to climate justice versus Shah. My judgment, the first country to have the right to mitigation and climate justice. Then Shala Zia Wabda. All good news we were saying. And this year, another good news came, the amendment to Constitution of Pakistan, right to environment is a part now. Everything I say today will be 30, 30, 30. 30 is when Justice Salim Akhtar in the 1994 Supreme Court judgment has held that there is no right to environment in Pakistan Constitution, and he has interpreted Article 9 as right to life means right to a healthy environment, which is now in this year after 30 years of 94, Constitution 9A says every citizen has a right to environment, right to clean, healthy and sustainable environment as a part of Pakistan Constitution. Again, the whole day we had a conference in the Supreme Court. The ambassador, His Excellency with the Romina, they sat all day and their turn came at 6 p.m. That shows the contribution of Pakistan. I must acknowledge the efforts of Abisuleri and Blunt and all. We had almost 10 exercises, 10 seminars on climate finance. Before going, STPI had the summit here at the China Center. We spoke on climate finance law. We had the center at the NIBAF. We had the conference at the IBA. All that was to gear up and buckle up for the preparation of a marathon of COP29. The results are manifold. What I see as an output of a COP28 to 29 is what everybody is mentioning, though we were thinking about 100 billion, it's gone to 3 times more than 300 billion commitment to next 2035. But most importantly, which is very, very important, is the outcome would be the goals we set. The goals we set was, and importantly, is that Pakistan was not even seen. Pakistan was very prominent in this COP. What in 1972, when the first ever environmental conference happened in the world, when they realized after what happened to Capitol Hill, Washington, the whole world, 111 countries, sat down in the Opera House in Stockholm, and they talked about the World Conference on Environment. First time the UN made that, and UNEP was formed. Pakistan was just seen there, but never heard. But in 1992, when Pakistan was led by Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif, Pakistan led G77 in the Rio Declaration, largest ever conference on planet, where the entire heads of the states came and spoke. The entire presidents of the world, queens, kings, all prime ministers, they were in 1992 at Rio. Pakistan was looking much better. Pakistan was leading a delegation. That's a historical, international, public international fact. Second and most important fact today to share with you is 30 is always very important for all of us. Why 30 again is important for us too, is that this time when we were achieving the goals for COP29 as a part of judiciary, all judges, Justice Masood Shah, Justice Asha Malik, and we all spoke in events in here and different events with the partners at Durham University, Cambridge and King's College. What I realized, and it came true, is when the Judges Global Network, led by the president, which is Antonio Benjamin, the Constitutional Chief Justice of Brazil, a very dear friend, we were in the Supreme Court of Azerbaijan, and he mentioned that this time in COP30 to be held in Belém, in Brazil, we will be involving judiciary to look into this matter. And what I want to say, and another historical fact coming out as a truth, the 30 years of Shalazia, 94 to 2024, 30 years of the Kyoto Protocol, and most importantly, the 30 years of involving judiciary, finally, to achieve their targets. The targets were to achieve in the COP29 as internationally law. I look at it that our goal was, for Pakistan's stance, was to achieve and secure some kind of a goal for climate finance. And last year, I spoke on climate finance law, and this year we've been speaking on a legal framework for climate finance for Pakistan. We are ready now. We have our legal framework because the Constitution of Pakistan itself recognizes the right to sustainable environment, and Pakistan Constitution itself opens the door for the implementation of the environmental agreements. Read with section of 31 of the Environmental Act, which says that Pakistan will ensure and implement the entire environmental agreements, and schedule mentions UNFCCC of 92 and Kyoto Protocol. Pakistan State Bank has a mandate under Section 41 of the Banking Commission's Ordinance 1962 to give the direction which they gave on green financing. SCCP under Section 20, subsection 4 of the 1997 Act has also given the green financing, which Amir Khan, the chairman, we given that Pakistan has the entire thing which has been framework given to Pakistan is. And their judgments of Pakistan are given two judgments on climate finance and how Pakistan is looking into it. But why it's important that judiciary was never involved globally on environment, not at the Rio, not in Stockholm, but the first time the world thought to involve judges. And that was in the Rio 30 plus was at the Johannesburg conference in South Africa, where judges met. That the judiciary and the executive have a symbiotic relationship. And symbiotic relationship in a point that we have to protect. And the whole thing, to conclude, I must say that it goes that whatever we've been talking about environment in a shape of nuisance 100 years ago, in a shape of negligence 80 years ago, in a shape of tort 60 years ago, in a shape of environment in the 60s, in a shape of environmental protection, then environmental conservation, environmental management, then we whole change the word now called climate, environmental justice, then climate justice. But now nobody going to use that now. We need now action, and that is the climate finance, which is very important. And two, the goal, as Sulaisa mentioned, the new climate goal NCQS, we achieved those. You know why? Because there were 4 goals to achieve for the COP, and the Romina is hearing here now with the ambassador. And we're lucky that Pakistan was achieving those at the country very close to Pakistan. When I was into Azerbaijan last year, we were told that Pakistan and Azerbaijan has a very close ties. It's a brother country. Pakistan was the one which made Azerbaijan the ambassador, the member of the United Nations in 92, through the efforts of Jamshed Marker, the UN rep in Pakistan. Pakistan's passport does not recognize Armenia as a member as a de facto de jure recognition. Pakistan is always sister Azerbaijan, and Pakistan was lucky to achieve its goal in the territory of Azerbaijan, where the Baku COP29 was held. What goal was to ensure the securing the good goals on climate finance, which we will be doing internally through the GSCF, GEF facility, the facilities of the multilateral banks, the facilities coming from our own banks, which we are now doing, ensuring that there will be the action against climate action, slashing greenhouse gases, and also the whole issue which came back to what will we get and how will we get. You will only get when you show that you are prepared. You will only get to show that we are the worst country to suffer from the climate actions. Sindh is the example. What is happening if we have to show that we have the brilliant, and the last thing, Pakistan was led by two females who never rested in Baku. The Ramina and the secretary. They were running around, they had very good events. Last year we had 49. I heard this time there are more events. It's all efforts of everybody together. And this thing, Pakistan, whole Pakistan is united. STPI, all partners stood together with them. Pakistan is united, that entire judges were together with you. And now when I asked Mr. Adnan, can you please step out with me to a climate action place because your province suffers the worst? He said, I will not say no. I'm like Tony Blair. Thank you.
Thank you, Justice Jawad. That was truly inspiring. And thank you for showing us again a better picture and initiatives that have been taken over the years by the legal community. And those of you who are not at the Baku, definitely the judges and the legal community had a very strong impact, especially when we're talking about the legal framework for climate financing in Pakistan. So thank you so much, sir, for enabling, and I will use the word, the climate action of Pakistan. So with this, let me invite Justice Adnan Chaudhary from Sindh High Court for his interventions. So thank you.
Dr. Suleri, the Honorable His Excellency, the Ambassador from Azerbaijan, Justice Jawad Hassan, the STPI, thank you for having me over here. I apologize for crashing in on your conference, but as Justice Jawad Hassan mentioned, you were right next door, and Justice Jawad and I go way back, couldn't say no to him. And of course, I was curious to see what SDBI really does. It's indeed encouraging to see that there is an institution that is thinking on a larger level. I've been put on the spot, didn't prepare anything, just have a few observations, and I leave it at that. For any climate change or climate finance paradigm, the center where the most adverse effects have taken place, I would understand you need to gather data from that center, that is Sindh, the coastline over there, the impact that the coastline over there has over the environment, the impact that the floods over there have had over the entire province, and the trickling down of those effects to the entire country. That needs to be figured into your analysis. So I would suggest that you send in a team over there to assess, to gather data. Maybe that will be useful to you in your next COP conferences. And the reason really why judges are now getting involved is that the domino effect of climate change trickles down to the courts in disputes that have now resulted between different parties. So at the end of the day, we do become a stakeholder. We do have to get involved, and that is why now the judges have come out to say what they've experienced, and we feel that may eventually add to the solutions that you eventually pose to challenge, to look at and to address the challenges posed by this immense issue that is now affecting the entire world now. Thank you so much for having me again. So kind of you.
Thank you, Justice Adnan. So I think with this, let me invite Madam Romina Khurshid Alam, the coordinator of Prime Minister on climate change. Please join me in giving her a big hand of applause. Her efforts in bringing everyone together for the climate change are hugely impactful. So with this, over to you, ma'am.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Thank you so very much. I wish I could speak more in detail, but as I requested Justice Jawad and Justice Adnan that I'll just take 5 minutes. So I'll try to take, my lord, 5 minutes. लेकिन अगर ऊपर नीचे होगा तो जान के मान पाएंगे हम. Well, thank you very much. For me, it's a great honor, honestly, that Alhamdulillah, Pakistan got a huge success. The COP29 is not me, it's not one person effort, it's everyone's effort. The most biggest success for me is that we all were one. All were one. Like there was no political differences, there was nothing. Everyone, like Sindh, Punjab, Balochistan, KPK, Gilgit-Baltistan, everyone was there. People from Kashmir youth was there. Everyone was there on one page and everyone was united and still, of course. And the most important thing that I'm really honored and thankful to the judiciary as well, because very rightly said that Justice Jawad Sab mentioned about the conference which they had in Supreme Court. And on that day, when from morning till evening, I sat there, the most important thing which I felt that it's the greatest need of the time that we should come up with the Judiciary International Climate Change Caucus. Pakistan is first of very type that Pakistan is, our judiciary is talking about that. And I think it's a great pride for all of us. And that is the reason that, and I believe on the institutional strengthening, institutional memories, institutional, because without that we can't work. And that is the important thing that the Pakistan took the lead. And I really want to appreciate and thanks to the judiciary, the way they have, hold 2 sessions over there and very strongly, and all the international judges, when they were there at Pakistan's pavilion and talking about the climate justice, that is something which is being more important to her, because every time you see, I'm very rightly said, Mr. Abid, that it's not good or bad. I really want to congratulate Azerbaijan, the ambassador, the whole government, the president, and my, of course, a very great and dear brother, Mr. Mukhtar Babai. The efforts as all team has done. And the way that Pakistan was being there to support our brotherly country, although like there are, of course, a few things on which maybe anyone as a party, we have our issues or reservations, but as one note, we all are together. So Pakistan has not given a political statement. Pakistan has led from the front. We fought for the like-minded countries. We raised not the voice for ourselves, we raised the voice for others. So, of course, as technically, of course, everybody is going to talk about that what the gains or what not. But the reflection I wanted to talk about more is quickly that everyone, like on the negotiation side, yes, very rightly said that the things which I felt as not only the participant, as being an observer, as we, every day we used to sit along with our team to discuss where are the, areas which we need to work more. And when we came back home, we came back with a whole homework that what is needed to be done in the coming future. And for that, I just wanted to say that Pakistan has, and I really want to appreciate and I want to bring in the knowledge of everyone, the negotiators of Pakistan. They have done a great job because they have been acknowledged by the people. By the international community, they've been acknowledged that the Pakistan's negotiator team was an amazing team. They had huge, they put their, efforts into that. Then again, when it comes to the policy dialogues, Pakistan has participated along in every forum and everywhere, and we tried our level best to raise the voice. In the end, usually people, when they saw my face and then another minister from the Egypt, they said that these 2 ladies are like, oh God, they're very, harsh. They don't agreed. They raised their voices very strongly. And yes, that was true, because why should we say, or we should understand, like we want to ask our rights. Because we are not the one who are the polluters, everybody know, but how to get our right. So for that matter of the fact, for me, this COP was more important when it comes to the COP, it was the financing COP, but I believe that this COP has given us all the way that we need the climate justice. We need the justice for the international, those vulnerable countries, like-minded countries, the V20 countries. And for that, Pakistan is again going to take a lead. Alhamdulillah, that Pakistan is going to host very soon the V20 countries, in which we are going to create a roadmap that how much it is important, because we only focus on one COP most of the time. But my dear, people, we have three COPs. One COP, which is called, which people usually talk about, that is about the COP 29, which we had. But then there is another COP like CBD COP, and then, UNCCD, which I'm coming from, the COP 16, which was being held in, which is going on in Saudi Arabia and Riyadh. It's very important for the vulnerable countries to understand. And for that, what I felt, and the most important thing is that all these vulnerable countries and all the sufferers, the developing countries, need to build up a mechanism in which how they can, create, and they get the right, because mostly what we have seen is that all the they just keep us busy in this thing, do this, do that, like NCQGs, do NDCs. Why we all do NDCs? Why not NDCs? Like, what about IDCs? Why Pakistan or the developing countries need to prove that, okay, do more, because the amount was 250. But Pakistan had a huge fight over there. We raised our voice and we said that Pakistan, only for ourselves, the way we are suffering, we need 350. So how can you not fix this amount? So, the 50 somehow got increased, but this is not enough, because that is going to implement on 2035. So what does it mean? So, these are the things which are very much important, and the cost of the COP. And there are so many small, big things which Pakistan has mentioned. I will not go in the very nitty-gritty details, but yes, Bali to Paris and then Paris to Baku. The journey is long, but what's the outcome? Because what I always, when I start something, I believe what is going to be the outcome, what is going to be the end product. For me, it's more important, as along with my people, that it's more important that at the end, what Pakistan and the developing country is going to get from that, where we are going to stand, until how, because this is not the way that Pakistan has done everything and we are doing, but we are doing from the amount which we took the loan. And then the sanctions, why not the grants? And why the mechanism which has been, because Pakistan highlighted everywhere that why the mechanism of the financing to get those grants, it's too tough for the developing countries. It's very much important to make the way easier. We need the technical supports. The technological transformation or transition has not been done in a way which has been said so far, from Bali till Paris and then till now. It's been said, but it's not been done. So we tried our level best to, raise this voice more in that. And then, as I said, I believe more that we need to come up with a pressure group. The pressure group from the judiciary side, the pressure group from the developing countries, the pressure from the like-minded countries. It's very much important that we should not be dragged in the trap. We need to be very much focused to get our rights. Not for Pakistan, also from the other countries, because it is going to be, because of course it's very much important that how we can make a roadmap and how we can, create the voices for each other. And then another thing which quickly I just wanted to say, that Pakistan, yes, Pakistan has done a lot in our own capacity, either it's judiciary, either it's civil society. And again, I'm really grateful to Mr. Mukhtar Babai, the president of the COP. He mentioned several times the support of the Pakistan, because when he came to Pakistan, I just wanted to share with you all, when he came for the COP invitation, that was his successful trip. He always mentioned about that. In those 3 days, we came up with lots of, plans that how we can work. And this time, the way civil society was being engaged, this way the gender was being discussed, this was also a very first time. And I think it is very much important to acknowledge the right and the best things which has been done. And I think the biggest success, of course, is that, how the strategy is going to be. Pakistan was being very rightly, and I'm really honored and thankful that everybody has mentioned, and especially when justice it comes from the Justice Jawad. Honestly, it means a lot to me. It means a lot to me when anyone is talking about that Pakistan has done something. And I'm really want to thank to the media as well. Those media, those have put the very positive picture of Pakistan, that Pakistan punches more bigger than its weight. And I think that is the success for Pakistan. And nothing is big, nothing is small. I think the most important is the will. The most important that what you want to achieve, and nothing is hard to get, but it's all if we are united, and then only the things can happen. And in just last but not the least, as Justice Adnan has mentioned that he just crashed, I think sometimes good crash are done for the good things. And I think it's very much important to have everyone on board. It's very much important to I always love to take healthy criticism. Even I took so much criticism from here and there that was funny even, but which has nothing to do with the reality. But I think it's more important that the true friends are those who always criticize you, but then they come up along with you and they said that here we are, let's work together. I want to thank to my all partners, all the those international and national partners, those have supported us a lot. Of course, I really want to say thanks to SDPI because they had supported a lot. It's always like the journey when I started in 2013. The parliamentarian who has not know much about the policy and things. I think that time I came as a blank paper, but now, Alhamdulillah, I don't say that I know a lot, but yeah, still, maybe. And that credit goes a lot to Abid Bhai. He's always been a great mentor. Maybe whatever we have done this time is a needle in a haycock. But still, I believe needle matters a lot. So Pakistan is, Alhamdulillah, going to raise its position more strongly. And again, I just wanted to say thanks to Justice Jawad, and I just want him to take this message to, of course, to the seniors as well, that we are looking forward for the Climate Justice Caucus, which is very much important. And that is something which we really need to focus, because for me, COP30, CBD COP, and the COP of UNCCD, all are very important, because these forums are very much important. And until and unless we are not going to raise our strong voices along with the judiciary, International Court of Justice, I think things won't gonna work. And this time, Pakistan's children also participated more than any youth, because I don't believe that youth is future. Youth is present, children are future. So it's not me or it's not you, it's us. So let's be together and be a strong family of Pakistan. Thank you so very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, madam. The efforts you have put in means a lot to us as well. And as we now conclude the first session, let me invite our honorable guests to the front for a quick group photo. So, Madam Romina, honorable justices, His Excellency, if you can please join us on the stage for a quick group photo. And at the same time, let me also invite some of our individuals who have been leading the negotiations and discussions at COP29. So, Bilal Anwar Sahab, Arif Guhir Sahab, Ms. Sobia, if you can also please join us on the stage, Ms. Sana Rasool, Dr. Shafkat, Dr. Khalid, please. If you can join us on the stage for a quick group photo. Hamza bhai, light band. Arif Guhir sir. Arif Guhir sir, please, if you can join us. Miss Sana, please. Please. Zainab, please. पहले यहाँ चलो पीछे में आ जाओ. Arif Guhir sir, Miss Sana, please. रश इतना था, कहाँ से बुला था, कहाँ से बुला इतने रश, इतना रश था, मैं खुद भी नहीं आया, मैं इसीलिए नहीं आया, मैं इसीलिए नहीं आया कि सालिहा नहीं आई, मैं इसलिए नहीं आया। Yes, thank you. If I can request everyone to please settle down, we will be starting a next roundtable discussion, and that's really a very technical session in which we'll be requesting inputs from some of the key experts, those who have joined us in person as well as online as well. So, yeah.
In the very last, I'm so sorry, quickly, just not to bother more, but I really want to say thanks to everyone, all the partners were really amazing, UNDP, JIZ, Triple GI, all of them. But Hamza, I just want you to stand. We all wanted to say thanks to you because with Hamza's support, I still remember the first day when me and Hamza met, Pakistan was almost going to be out from the Global Shield project. But he came and he said, Madam, agar hum bacha sakte hain, tumhe bachana hai. And we have done it. And yes, really. And Sobia, I really wanted to say thanks to you as well. Because आप भी अगर परेशान ना होती तो हम जो 7.5 million euros हम पाकिस्तान के लिए ना बचा पाते. So I'm really thankful कि आप लोगों ने मुझे डराते रहे और मैं भाग भाग के हमने वो efforts किए, and really honestly that means a lot. And then of course UNDP also, Shiraz sahab, I really wanted to say thanks to you for all the efforts and everyone, every single person. Really, Alhamdulillah, Allah has been so kind कि हर forum पर जब ये कहा जा रहा था कि पाकिस्तान हर जगह नजर आ रहा है, अनऑफिशियल हमारी 144 कंप्लीट अगर हम डालें तो ये वो डिजिट है जो हमें नहीं पता. फ्रॉम पीपल वी केम अक्रॉस टू नो कि सुबह 9 बजे हमारा पवेलियन स्टार्ट होता था और रात को 8 बजे, जबकि 8-9 बज जाते थे, जबकि दूसरे पवेलियंस पे हैप्पी आवर्स शुरू हो जाते थे. लेकिन पाकिस्तान के पवेलियन पे वर्किंग आवर्स थे, व्हिच इज आई थिंक एवरीबॉडी नीड्स टू बी प्राउड ऑफ इट. थैंक यू, जज़ाकल्लाह.
Thank you so much, Madam, for your kind words. So with this, we'll be moving towards a roundtable. So let me very quickly set a scene. In this, we'll be actually reflecting how do we actually go forward about these whole announcements, especially in the backdrop of that Pakistan is very shortly the start of or the mid of next year going to submit its updated national determined contributions. And then we also have to look forward to our goal again for COP30 as well. So we'll actually have the discussion in three major themes. One would be initially, the first one would be around mitigation, in which we'll have Bulan Saab Basit from Renewables First, Ms. Sana Rasool from Ministry of Climate Change, Environmental Coordination, and other experts. Then we'll be moving towards adaptation, in which we have also speakers joining us online. And then then towards the cross-cutting themes, that would be the gender, the women, and the issues and interest of climate vulnerable communities as well. So with this, for the scene setting presentation of the roundtable, let me invite Dr. Zainab Naeem, the head of ecological and circular economy unit at Sustainable Development Policy Institute. And if I may request Mr. Hamza to sort of share this presentation. Thank you. And the session will be co-moderated with Ms. Saleha Qureshi. So over to you, Zainab. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ubaid. So I'll very briefly go through the outcomes of COP29. As our other respected speakers mentioned earlier, there's no such thing as good COP or bad COP. COP is COP, and for countries like Pakistan, it's usually a success story in different ways. So I'll just project a few outcomes. So overall, the COP29 saw progress on increasing climate finance commitments, operationalizing adaptation frameworks, and strengthening carbon markets and transparency. The carbon markets agenda was deferred during COP28, and COP29 presidency ensured that it continues and it gets adapted. And then, as the Excellency Ambassador mentioned, that there were more than 70,000 people who attended COP29, and it marked a significant milestone. As Madam Romina also mentioned, we had delegations, within the delegation, we had children and youth. So to ensure the meaningful participation of children within the Youth-led Climate Forum for the first time, COP29 presidency ensured it through engaging children as young as 10 years who were not there as participants but also participated as speakers and moderators. And then the Global Climate Action Space at COP29 provided a platform for governments, businesses, and civil society to collaborate and showcase their real-world climate action. So this is a snapshot of what were the key announcements or outcomes at COP29. The new collective quantified goal on climate finance of $1.3 trillion initially, the debate started, and annually to be spent by 2035, including $300 billion annually for developing countries was announced. Although by developing countries, this was not a standard finance goal that they wanted to see, but at least something did take place at COP29, and thanks to the presidency. The agreement to Article 6.2, 6.4 of the Paris Rule Book, which are around carbon markets, they cover country-to-country emission trading approaches, referred to as internationally transferred mitigation outcomes, the ITMOs. The final text clarifies the use of ITMOs and prevents double accounting. And then the conference put significant focus on operationalization of the global goal and adaptation. The key component was enabling factors for the implementation of adaptation by the countries. So this was mentioned in the text. Operationalizing the loss and damage fund with initial disbursements expected by mid 2025. So there was a lot of discussion around loss and damage fund and how it should be, the modalities, what the modalities should be. So during the negotiations as well, different countries participated, and there were heated debates as well. But at least the presidency provided an open platform for participation. Then it marked another win for transparency with enhanced reporting requirements for emissions, climate finance, and adaptation progress, the ETF. And the several nations submitted their first biennial transparency reports, including Azerbaijan, Turkey, and the European Union. Countries agreed a decision on gender and climate change, extending the enhanced Lima work program on gender and climate change for another 10 years. So these were the pledges that the presidency came up with. The truce appeal for the first time, then global energy storage and grids pledge, green energy zones, hydrogen declaration, declaration on green digital action. There was a lot of momentum around the digital action and how digitalization tools should be integrated as part of climate action. Reducing methane from organic waste, multi-sectoral action pathways, declaration to resilient and healthy cities, to enhanced action in tourism, and declaration on water for climate action. These were the two main declarations that were announced for the first time, and with an enhanced focus around water and tourism. Then other initiatives include the Climate Finance Action Fund. It will be capitalized by voluntary contributions from the fossil fuel producing countries, and Azerbaijan will be the founding body of this fund, aiming for $1 billion fund to be dispersed to the developing countries. The Baku Initiative for Climate Finance Investment and Trade through UNCTAD collaboration was announced, and then the Initiative on Human Development for Climate Resilience with UNESCO by focusing around education, skills, job creation, social protection. Then there was Baku Harmonia Climate Initiative for Farmers in collaboration with FAO. There was Baku Global Climate Transparency Platform to build mutual trust and confidence among parties, to support them for their BTR reporting and encourage universal participation in the enhanced transparency framework. Now, what was deferred at COP29 and what will be taken forward at COP30? So this is a sort of the pre-agenda setting for that as well. So energy transition and UAE dialogue was deferred, aimed at implementing recommendations from the global stocktake was stalled. Key targets such as tripling renewable energy and enhancing energy storage capacity were left unresolved. And then Just Energy Work Program, negotiations on supporting workers and communities during the transition to clean energy failed to reach consensus. There was some heated argument between developed and developing countries, so around the target setting, so that's why it was deferred. And global goal on adaptation, although there were really good debates around GGA, but then some procedural advancements were made at COP29 through the Baku adaptation roadmap, but crucial elements like financing and how that fund should be disbursed were left undecided. And then loss and damage fund, although there was discussion around operationalization and disbursement by 2025, but discussion about integrating it into the broader climate finance under the new collective quantified goal were deferred. So this is going to be the agenda that will be discussed at COP30. So if we conclude the outcomes of COP29 in one statement, so they set a good standard for inclusivity, sustainability, and hospitality with accessible venues, sustainable transport, top-tier accommodations, and an exceptional volunteer force. Another important aspect around COP is that although South Asia, if we talk about South Asia, we are least integrated region in the world. Countries don't talk to each other, but at COP we do talk to each other. We do discuss issues that are affecting us in context of climate change, like smog, like overall climate crisis that's affecting us. So COP provided us the platform to discuss that. Apart from that, there was a very good volunteer force there to guide the delegates coming from around the world. The transport system was really good. They had buses, and then it was inclusive COP where every region participated and discussed their issues. It was an open platform. So we are really grateful to the presidency of COP29 for making it a success story. And we are hopeful that the pledges that were signed, the discussion, around climate strengthening, climate action, it will be taken as a way forward, and countries will work out on solutions with the help of COP29 presidency and Azerbaijan government to enhance their overall climate action. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Zainab, for setting the scene. So now moving towards the roundtable, it will be chaired by Mr. Bilal Anwar, the CEO of National Disaster and Risk Management Fund. And I believe, again, just taking lead from the last discussion, we'll sort of try to keep a focus on how do we actually move forward from this point to, again, some of the really key decisions coming up, again, ranging from NDCs to what needs to be taken to COP30. So firstly, let me take this opportunity to, we'll do the roundtable from the table, but for initially setting the scene and the initial remarks, let me invite Mr. Bilal Anwar, the CEO of NDRMF, to the podium for initial interventions, and then we'll continue with the roundtable. So Bilal, sir, if you can, sir, please join us on the stage. Yeah, thank you. And if I can also request the audience to please settle down on the seats. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you very much, and thank you for giving the opportunity. And I think this is one of the first sessions after the COP29, and I'm sure that we'll be passing through and we'll be sitting and experiencing a few more in the coming days and the weeks. So a lot has been said. I'll be brief and try to be focused as well. And we have heard a lot about the what has been achieved or what could have been achieved at the COP29. And this COP was no different from many other COPs. So while there was some elements of success, I mean, there are quite a huge areas which have been left behind for the next COP to cover them up and to take the agenda forward. So, but I think I will try to kind of contextualize few of the decisions which have been taken, and the few of the decisions which have been taken, they have not been really contextualized. They're not really stemmed on some of the numbers or some of the scientific kind of observations and the numbers which were out there in front of the COP for them to anchor their decisions. So there was a lot about the finance and the amount and the magnitude of the finance which is required. And then there was a lot of discussion about raising the ambition and of course the NDCs, the current status of the implementation of NDCs, and then how the next phase of the updating of the NDCs are going to be kind of bridging the gap between the implementation and what are the key kind of the challenges in terms of where the implementation is not really happening. So a report came out from the UNFCCC, which is the synthesis report on the implementation of NDCs, and which is quite interesting, which basically they do it on a periodical basis, and which provides some kind of insights that how the countries are actually taking the implementation of their indices forward. And then it also look in a kind of a very credible and scientific way that how the number projection is going to work in terms of the emission reductions, and then whether we are on a track for the Paris 1.5 degree target or not. So just to quote a couple of numbers from the last NDC and the last review of the NDCs, and this is this very latest one, 2024 review. What we have found out that a number of countries have actually been trying extremely hard to implement their NDCs, and the projections basically shows that the 54 gigatons of, and that's excluding the LULUCF, 54 gigatons of the global greenhouse gas emissions have been done, and then similarly, when we try to look into the carbon budget or try to look into the projections of the emissions, what we are seeing that the track record or the kind of pathways towards 1.5 degrees centigrade. So the likelihood of meeting that target is actually decreasing every year. So what does that mean is that the ambition or the targets for NDCs in terms of the global greenhouse gas emissions reductions need to be increased, and this is something which we are going to be seeing at the next year when the countries, and including Pakistan, they are going to be updating and they're going to be submitting the implementation as well as the new NDCs as well. But what we clearly know that the world is the world trajectory, emissions trajectory is clearly off track in terms of the 1.5 degree target. So and then there's a quite interesting chapter in the same report which basically is titled as means of implementation, and which basically compiles that why the countries have not been able to implement their NDCs target. And the single most factor or the challenging factor is the finance, and the second one is the technical assistance, and the third one is the access to the technology. But access to the finance or availability and adequacy of the finance remains the single most important factor, which of course was very fittingly was a part of this particular COP agenda, and what of course we were expecting that a much more bigger or a much more reasonable figure is going to be agreed by the COP, which of course unfortunately did not happen. But nevertheless, I think there are a number of other issues which need to be taken into consideration as well, because what we know for sure is that the magnitude or the money which we are talking about running into trillions on a per annum basis, that magnitude, the volume of the funding is just is not available in the public international public financial systems. So this basically was required, or it's very much needed, is that what kind of a new instruments and new ways of mobilizing finance need to bring into the picture, and that's where the focus has to be, because the baseline is there now. We know that this amount and magnitude of the financing is just not available. So I think from in a extremely or strictly from Pakistan perspective, I think we need to see that as well. And several reports and from the World Bank and several other institutions and the global reports as well, showing that the numbers or the amount of the financing which Pakistan needs for its own in NDC's implementation, as well as the adaptation needs and other measures. We know that once again, that financing is not available in the public financial system, as well as the financing is not available from international financial system as well. So the private sector, the private capital, as well as the financial bridging and leveraging of finance from so many different and diverse sources has to come into the play, which of course is not happening at all in Pakistan, and that's not happening in globally either. So this basically needs that have to come up with a new instrument, have to come up with a new mechanisms, and this is where the role of the institutions like NDRMF as well as SDPI and number of others who are around the table here, it become critically important and instrumental that we come up with the new ways of financial engineering and the financial mobilization mechanisms and instruments which basically allow us to come up with these kind of numbers. So I think this is something which Pakistan need to take into consideration in terms of updating of its NDC. I don't think this is going to be sufficient or strong enough that we come up with a new kind of a revised number in terms of the financing which we need on the mitigation and adaptation side, and then we expect that this money is going to be falling from international system, and which basically allow us to fuel our climate action. This is not going to happen, and we have to come up with the new ways of mobilizing financing. And I think this is where the focus should be for this particular year. So when we go to the COP30, we go with a much more concrete and refined ways of fueling and financing our climate action. So I thank you very much, and very much look forward to hear from the other experts for this in this roundtable. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bilal, for highlighting the NDC's commitments and what we are going to take forward for the COP30 as well. So now we are about to start the roundtable discussion, and we have been joined by key experts who have been there for the COP29, and we wanted to listen from them that what's their stance on the NDCs and what actionable steps they needed that we are actually taking from the Baku to the Belém, and also what type of support they need from the stakeholders like the civil society, from the private organizations and the government organizations, that we actually make it more ambitious towards the COP30. So firstly, we have been joined by Mr. Arif Goir, who is the Executive Director of Global Change Impact Study Center. So sir, I think we can start from here. You can sit over there. So as we are how do you see that the progress was on the NDCs on COP29, and what support do you need from the stakeholders for updating NDCs of Pakistan? Yes, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, first of all, to STPI for organizing this event and inviting me to share my thoughts on NDC process in Pakistan that we are currently following for its updation. As we currently are on the process of taking stock of what we have done from 21 till 24, we are preparing the greenhouse gas inventory so as to know where we are standing in terms of emissions. But one thing is clear based on the comparison of inventories of 2018 versus 2021, that the emissions in terms of energy are going down. There are many reasons, but I will not enter into the debate of these discussions, but we definitely are seeing a decreasing trend in it. If we talk about some of the achievements that we have done in terms of the commitments made in the previous NDCs. So we in the previous NDCs talk about decreasing the share of coal, imported coal, and resorting more on the local coal. So it's very much there. abandoning of some of the coal power plants and replacing it with one of the hydro project called Azad Patan project, influx of solar in our system to a significant amount. And then we talked about increasing the share of protected areas from 12 to 15%. Presently, we are now at 19.92%. We talked about carbon sequestration through upscale Green Pakistan program, formerly called as 10 billion to tsunami. We are almost on track presently, almost more than 2.5 billion plantations have been done. So this was the context where we are standing, but we still are taking a stock taking phase. Referring to your question on how to take it forward and what could be the role of the stakeholders in it. One of the things that we have realized that despite having institutional mechanisms, not only at federal level, but we also during the last 3 years triggered the provincial actors, and we have the provincial NDC nodal entities where we have worked with them on some of the priority actions in terms of energy, transport, waste and agriculture sectors. But finance is a major limitations. We could not meet and it's very clear from the stock take that the commitments that we have made conditional in terms of achieving 35% of emissions, there is a huge gap. And we are currently doing the analysis of it. And as per the proceedings of the COP, that we have realized vehemently that we need to think of out-of-box solutions. The international finance is not coming into the Pakistan with the pace that is required to meet with the requirements. Though we made a very, very ambitious target of reducing the emissions to 50%. So the role of the development partners, the role of the civil society is there to support in terms of the financial. We at the COP margins try to get a consensus on the technology implementation roadmap, but we found a sound resistance from developed countries in terms of it. They are still focusing on the intellectual property rights sort of things, means that technology will not be easily accessible to the country. So here I see the role of the development partners here. So technology and finance are the key elements where they can chip in. On one side, we are raising the ambitions. On the other side, we are also under the vagaries of more reporting burden. This is quite unfair from the international world. In the present NDC, what we are looking for is to have a balance between mitigation and adaptation. We have suffered a lot in last couple of years. Every year we are facing 3 to 4 disasters in terms of heat waves and floods. So this year's NDC will be equally poised between mitigation, adaptation, and loss and damage. So the private sector, the development partners, the civil society can support us in the provision of technologies, in the provision of financial support and the capacity building. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, and for highlighting that what would be the way forward for the NDCs of Pakistan, and what we will taking from here to Belem, that what would be the way forward for Pakistan on NDCs as well. So I would request our experts to please limit their response from 4 to 5 minutes, and to keeping from NDCs from GCI Yasina, I would request Ms. Sana Rasool, who is the Deputy Director from Ministry of Climate Change, that what are the Ministry of Climate Change reflections on Article 6, and how do you see the COP29 on that? Yeah, please.
Thank you very much. Let me just first take a moment to thank the STPI for having us all here today. I feel that it's even more important to have post-COP debriefs and discussions than whatever we do in the negotiation rooms, because this is ultimately where our strategy and our policy takes birth. So thank you very much. And I'd also like to thank all the mentors and colleagues in this room who have been of ultimate and utmost support during the entire negotiation process. Now coming to your question, Article 6, fortunately, has been one of those streams where we were able to reach consensus, but this consensus has not come easily. It's come after 9+ years of intense negotiations. We've seen that Article 6 was one of the most difficult articles of the Paris Agreement to reach consensus on because it's so intricate, it's so complicated, but we have full operationalization now. So let me just walk us very briefly through what happened in the negotiation room and then how we see this going forward, especially in context of NDCs 3. So the draft texts that we had on Article 6 were actually very alarming. They had ambiguity over the status of authorization being a national prerogative or not. We ensured during this negotiation process that authorization must remain the prerogative of the first transferring party. We now have that in the decisions. In addition, there were punitive measures under paragraph 43 of the draft negotiation text. Punitive measures were added unilaterally by some parties in the negotiation document on inconsistencies. Now, if the internationally transferred mitigation outcomes were determined to be inconsistent, it was written in the text that these would not be available for NDC trading in the market. We aligned ourselves with the LMDC. We collaborated with them intensely, spent several sleepless nights over this, and got that language toned down successfully. And also regarding upfront specification of how environmental integrity would be achieved through the ITMOs and through A6.4 ERs. There were 3 pages of text that were included in the draft decision. And unfortunately, this was also unilaterally done by some of the parties, which was against the mandate that we had at Glasgow. Therefore, thankfully, that upfront specification, those mandatory requirements, we were also able to negotiate on the table and take those into the annex now. So they're not mandatory requirements anymore. And I think there we've reduced our burden, but this is not, we've not avoided the situation altogether. It's going to come back in upcoming COPs, right? So we'll have to sort of try to integrate that into our reporting process sooner or later. Now, coming back specifically to your question, yes, NDCs were the main focus of discussion throughout negotiations on every stream, and on Article 6 in particular. Developed countries are pushing us towards high ambition, right? And high ambition makes sense, but it should come from the developed countries. They should take a lead on this because they're the historic emitters, and pushing developing countries for, raising their ambition when they're not ready to provide finances seems unfair, as Arif Saab just mentioned. Second important focus was on transparency. Now, I feel that it's becoming increasingly evident, by the way, that we have failed to achieve the mitigation outcomes from NDCs 2. So by we, I mean the international community. So in NDCs 3 and in the upcoming COP30, we'd see greater focus on transparency. And it's likely that the push would be now on the quality of the ITMOs and Article 6.4 ERs. Now, when we talk about qualities, then inconsistencies become a major issue. And also the reporting requirements that have been added with the word request now would most likely then become mandatory in coming years, right? So we'd have to start looking at those as well. We would need support to develop a pipeline of only the highest quality ITMOs and A6.4 ERs that we put out on the market. And in that, I think the private sector and our stakeholders can play a very important role so that we do not get tagged any ITMO that comes from Pakistan should not get tagged with an inconsistency. If that happens, then we lose our market competitiveness. We need to see this as a market, and we have to establish our competitive advantage through the quality of our ITMOs going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Sana, for highlighting the Article 6 negotiations and prospects way forward for the COP30 as well. Now, moving forward, I would request Advocate Buland Sohail that what would be your reflections on the COP29 and what would be the way forward for COP30? Yeah.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad that SDPI is taking this initiative to keep the memory of COP alive. We usually go from COP to COP. I think this momentum building exercise is fantastic. Before COP, as was mentioned by Justice Jawad, we did a stakeholder kind of session on climate finance. In this session, we worked with SECP and the State Bank jointly, and we had 3 successful streams. One with the EV industry, one with NICA, with Sardar Saab, and the other one was on climate smart agriculture. And it was so surprising to know that while State Bank and the World Bank are talking about taxonomy, and SECP and ADB are talking about insurance, nobody is internally talking. There's a serious lack of internal cohesion. I think this needs to be addressed with alacrity and very seriously. There has to be coalition building exercise done domestically. I think that's missing in the national narrative, from governments to government, from government to subnational government, from government to the private sector, and in between the private sector as well. So I'll give you an example. For example, if we talk about the Climate Change Fund, Pakistan is one of the most giving countries in the world. I mean, this is an established fact. We have the Pakistan Center of Philanthropy, which is sitting in Islamabad and is sitting on billions of rupees of funding. Why isn't the relevant people, talking to the PCP to invigorate that fund? And there's so many other organizations. So this kind of, internal narrative, cohesion building, coalition building, internal cohesive work needs to be done, and somebody has to take charge of it. That's one key takeaway. The other one, as was said by many speakers, we're really out of financing options. The global north will continue to disappoint the global south. There's no doubt about that. They will continue to fudge, obfuscate, and skirt their responsibility. For that, we need to create multiple strategies. I think the judges sitting here need to wear the hats of lawyers again. We need to come up with lawfare strategies at the international level. We need to promote strategic litigation. We need to get involved with global climate litigation forums to put pressure up. And at the same time, of course, we need to do diplomacy on the V20 platform and many other platforms. And, when we talk about climate financing, why isn't our leading financial institution regulators involved? I mean, State Bank is an extremely prestigious old institution, as old as Pakistan. It is packed with leading economists, leading bankers. Why are they not being involved in the climate financing discussion? It behooves me. But we need to take things forward positively, and I hope to announce very soon that State Bank is going to start an idea lab, which is going to be a matchmaking forum for climate financing and climate projects, whether it's mitigation or adaptation. And the other thing they're doing, they're just coming out of a climate literacy program. There was a nationwide climate literacy program where they trained, financial literacy program where they trained 1 million students. They want to replicate this program from a climate education lens, and they're looking for partners. So I would urge everybody to really get out of their comfort zones and start reaching out to other institutions and organizations. And this should be done really with some urgency in mind. And as far as SCP is concerned, I mean, we talk about loss and damage fund. Hello, SCP regulates the insurance sector. We can definitely come up with novel, innovative strategies if we involve the insurance sector, the Pakistan Reinsurance, the National Insurance Company, These are again very old institutions. They have linkages with foreign insurers. We can offer blended insurance products which could benefit not only the microinsurance industry, but also the microfinance industry. Let's come up with solutions, please. Let's work with each other, please. The reason why I think this is not happening is there's a serious lack of climate education in the country. There is a complete dearth of climate education. Every institution that I've spoken to, I had to educate myself a couple of years ago on climate, but every single institution that I've spoken to has said, we don't have capacity. We need to be educated. So at this COP, the Cambridge University announced 150 online scholarships, bursaries, at the cost of £2,000 per course. We need to make sure that this is spent, the bursary is well deployed so that we multiply this number next year. We need to get HEC on board to declare a climate emergency as an acknowledgement of their failure, number one. And secondly, all the universities in Pakistan need to work in their own respective expertise to create sustainability centers. NED should be leading the front on technology. IBA should be leading the front on climate finance. I mean, why? These are such easy things to do. I mean, this is just pure logic, but nobody's following it up, unfortunately. Similarly, I think all the ministries of education needs to include climate education in their curriculum. This is so important. And I don't care if the curriculum committee says it'll take 4 years. No, it has to take 1 or 2 years. We need to really integrate. The young people in this country are more aware than all of us, and they're more impacted. Lastly, just one request from the ministry, please. Please give life to all the provisions of the Climate Change Act, whether it's the council or the authority or the chairman or chairperson. Please give life to these provisions. And believe me, if you give life to these provisions, I've seen the ministry this is the first time I've seen any ministry take charge from the front. It has really taken leadership, and hats off to you guys. But do give life, and you will see the rest of the society and stakeholders follow behind you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Definitely climate literacy and sustainability labs are the way forward. Now, for the first round of mitigation, I would now request Basit Gauri from Renewables First, that what are the reflections from COP29 on energy transition and renewable energy? Please specify your stance for 3 minutes.
Thank you so much, Saliha. And first of all, we'll start off by commending, the ministry itself, Madam, and SDPI for really putting forth Pakistan Pavilion in such a way in past COP, because we have heard a lot that it's not a COP that essentially has a lot of turnout, but this time there were several, at least for the second week, I saw there's a lot of turnout from different people. So before I get into the specific recommendations on the mitigation work program, just wanted to get my key takeaways out from the recent COP. And to be honest, from my side, my own personal opinion, I would not call it a successful COP. The primary reasons: it was dubbed as a finance COP, and when it comes to the finance, we have not delivered up to the par collectively. We have not been able to, like, $300 billion amount, as Abid Saab was alluding to it, it's peanuts as opposed to the actual requirements. And 1.3 trillion was, by the way, the official UNFCCC number. The actual estimates by many of the working groups in the climate change goes beyond 2 or 3 trillion. So the actual requirements are much higher. Similarly, not much on the L&D commitments. Mitigation work program was deferred for the next year COP. So I think these were a few of the key things that we were expected and that have not been successful. Having said that, I think there's still a silver lining that I personally saw in this whole proceedings. And that was the difference between the global south and global north was much more evident. We have seen pressure groups working, G7, G20, and G77, different pressure groups working out. but we have never seen such a collective action where we have two starkly different groups fighting against one another. So I would look at it as an opportunity where we see in the future negotiations that you potentially have much more voice to a collective action through the Global South platform. And Abid Sir was mentioning about US backing out and a seat available. I would say this whole Global South platform being built up, there is still a lot of vacuum available for the Global South to drive the change. Now, having said that, I think for the Pakistan, this is also an ideal time to kind of try to be on the driver's seat of that Global South platform. And that's particularly because there are a couple of things that has happened in Pakistan, and we are not able to sell the story right. And as Arif was also saying that we have to, the emissions are coming down. Why those emissions are coming down? We have to incorporate that, and that can become a driving factor for us in the future COP to kind of lead the Global South platform as well. And I think a couple of things that I just wanted to mention from the energy sector, because that's particularly from my background. We have received the cost of the solar and wind in Pakistan have been the cheapest as ever. We have seen the cheapest auctions happening. We have seen the import of solar PV in past 1 year, about 15 gigawatts. Just to give you an example, that resonates to the fact that we have already achieved the tripling goal that was agreed last year. So there's so much to sell out. The story is we just have to frame it the right way and to be the part of the leading negotiations for the upcoming Brazil in the Bellum. So lastly, coming towards your specific thing on the NDCs, what should be included? I think one thing we have to realize is that while the NDCs are also to reflect externally about what we have achieved, it's also to align internally and be ambitious ourselves. And that is something that we have to do. So we have to validate our NDCs as well in terms of the projections that we are making, so that we have some pressure on ourselves at the same time in order to make sure that we are doing something. We are not doing business as usual, and then after 5 or 6 years we are claiming that we have achieved something when we haven't done actually. So I think there's a lot of things that we have to take internally as well. Secondly, on the mitigation side, I think one thing, even though the 300 billion is not enough, I think we are not able to access climate finance to an extent that we should. Pakistan GCF line about $300 million. That's peanuts compared to the 100 billion, committed. So how can we get enhanced access to that? That's something that we need to focus on. Another thing, I think, and from the strategies perspective that should be put forth in the NDCs, I think for the next year, I think they should have a more of an ecosystem approach, not just putting up the targets for certain technologies to be incorporated. So for instance, if we are putting up solar and wind, we should go for the whole industry level. So what is the infrastructure that should be involved? If we are talking about EV goals, we should have an approach. We were talking about the infrastructure that is needed with the EVs. We should be talking about the supporting the new startups in the EV space to make the NDCs more robust. And this last point I would point out on the NDC part is, we have talking from the internalized perspective that we have to make sure that it's implementable. We need to have the corresponding implementation plan, the financing strategy, and also the implementation strategy. That should be coupled with the NDC plan. It should not come like 3-4 years down the road. Essentially, it should go with the NDC. So I think that's pretty much crucial and lessons learned for us internally, how we can proceed forward. So thank you.
Thank you, Basit, for highlighting the energy transition in COP 20 or 29. Yes, moving forward, I would request Mr. Hamza Haroon that please give your stance on what would be the role of Vulnerable 20 on COP 29, and what is the way forward we are taking from COP 29 to COP 30.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Thank you so much. It's very hard to go after Basit. I feel like he's covered so many things, but I'll try to give my 2 cents on what CVFV20 is doing and what I saw at Baku. Just to give you all a quick introduction, my name is Hamza Harun. I'm the Regional Director for South Asia for CVFV20, the Climate Vulnerable Forum, Vulnerable Group of Finance Ministers. We are an intergovernmental organization of 70 countries now. These are 70 global South countries that face the same issues that Pakistan faces when it comes to climate change. These are the same countries that are continuously in this climate debt trap, and they're figuring it out to be very hard to get out of it. So let me start there. We represent 1.76 billion people when it comes to the 70 countries that we speak about. Before I go into Baku, let me congratulate STPI for once again having the foresight to have these amazing conversations. It's very important that you start early. And I'm going to speak about why it matters to start early. I also want to congratulate Madam Romina and her entire team for an absolutely fantastic COP29 delivery when it comes to pavilions, when it comes to organizing events, when it came down to negotiations. They were absolutely stellar. I deal with many countries, and I must say I was extremely proud to be a Pakistani when I was at COP29 because of the work that Madam Romina and her entire team were doing. Absolutely fantastic. Now, I want to position this conversation that I have for 5 minutes in 3 parts. The first part is that we all have to zoom out now. When I say zoom out, I mean don't look at COP30, look at the year 2025. What is going to happen in year 2025? It's going to start off with World Bank, IMF spring meetings. It's then going to go into UNGA. And before UNGA, there's a very consequential, critical meeting going to happen in Spain, the International Conference on Financing for Development in Sevilla. We have to target that. Then you go into UNGA. UNGA is becoming increasingly relevant when it comes to climate change. There's the Climate Week happens there, the Summit of the Future happens there. Then after that, you have the World Bank annual meetings happening where the finance ministers and environment ministers are going and speaking about climate change. And then you come to COP30. So the reason why I'm saying all this is you have to zoom out. You have to understand how do we make a play in 2025 at all these events? How do we talk to the right people who will help us create that pressure group that Madam Romina is talking about to really have an impact when it comes to Baku? Now, that's the part of zooming out of looking at 2022, 2025. The other part is priorities. What are the priorities for 2025? Baku to Belem is going to be a priority. The other priority is going to be the GGA, the Global Goal on Adaptation. How are we going to start those conversations now? I remember very clearly that many of the countries in my territory were talking about NCQG in June, July. And I was like, guys, this is June now. You should have had a strategy in, last December. So let's not make that mistake. Pakistan didn't do it, but other countries were doing it. So my advice to them was also understand the priorities now and start working on them. So, as TPI is leading this initiative and the Ministry of Climate Change is leading this initiative, start talking about those priorities now. The second part I want to talk about is reforming the international financial architecture. What we have clearly seen now is that the MDBs are once again given the responsibility through NCQG because of the quality of finance being terrible again within the NCQG framework. How can we make sure that this international finance reform works for developing countries, works for climate vulnerable countries? Because it is currently not working for us. The high cost of capital, the climate debt that we have, the debt traps that we have, they're not working for us. So we need to start working from now on. What does Bretton Woods 2.0 look like? How do we reform international financial architecture so it becomes easier for us to hit our climate outcomes and our development outcomes? So that's the second point. And the last point I want to mention, and it kind of goes back to zooming out, is like unite South Asia. The biggest issue that I see within my work is that you have a not so united South Asia. The moment Pakistan becomes the leader in South Asia when it comes to climate change, when we start talking to Maldives, when we start talking to Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Nepal, and other countries in this area, and Bhutan, and they start looking at Pakistan as the leader, you will see a big difference. SARC is a slow boat that is going nowhere. So if you keep on placing your bets on SARC, I don't know what's going to happen. I hope we can find a way to revive SARC, but if we can't revive SARC, we figure a way out to unite South Asia so that every one of these countries looks at Pakistan, looks at Madam Ramina, looks at the Ministry of Climate Change of Pakistan as leaders, and starts to go and negotiate that way. If we don't do that, I think we might have some problems in the future as well. So for me, the three important things I'll just reiterate is to zoom out, really look at everything, understand what does 2025 look like, what are the priorities that are going to be there, how do we reform the international financial architecture, and how do we become leaders of South Asia when it comes to climate change. So those be the 3 points, and I'll give the time back to the chair. Thank you so much. Very kind.
Yes, thank you, Hamza, for highlighting the priorities we need to set up for this year. And also, when we zoom out, we will see the global South perspective on that South Asian perspective is very important for the climate change negotiations. So if we have Mr. Sanjay with us, so we will listen from him. So moving forward, I would request Mr. Alamgir Khan Gandapur, if he's online with us. Sir, how do you see how do you see that the blue carbon projects scale up to contribute to the NDC's goal? We are about to submit our NDC 3.0. So how do you see that role in that? Yeah, over to you.
Thank you so much. I am Alamgir Khan Gandapur. I am country head and chief technical officer with the Indus Delta Capital, which is implementing the Delta blue carbon projects in the Indus Delta area of Sindh province, Pakistan. The Delta blue carbon projects are restoring around 425,000 hectares of degraded coastal lands in Sindh province through mangrove restoration on these lands. As a result of this mangrove restoration, we are protecting the most vulnerable coastal communities from coastal erosion, from sea level rise, and from other negative impacts of climate change. So the Delta Blue Carbon Project is not only sequestering and doing the climate change mitigation work, but we are also contributing in big ways to climate change adaptation in the most vulnerable areas of Pakistan. That is the thing that we are doing. The other thing is that we are having strategic collaborations with some of the big names in the world, like Silvestrum Climate Associates, Trafalgar, Envolto Earth, and Coolant Earth. These are some of the international organizations which are big names in the respective areas. Silvestrum Climate Associate is one of the known organizations which develops different methodologies for Vera, be it for mangrove restoration or be it from other terrestrial forests. So we are working with them towards methodological development, which Pakistan can use and which will be approved by Vera for large-scale adoption world over, not only in Pakistan, but also world over. So we are contributing in terms of methodological development for nature-based solution projects. The other work that significant that we are doing is we are working with the nature framework of Vera, whereby we are developing the Delta Blue Carbon Project is developing a methodology for biodiversity credits generation. And these credits, in addition to the carbon credits, Pakistan and other countries will be able to sell biodiversity credits in addition to the carbon credits. The third area that we are working with, we are introducing a digital MRV system into the nature-based solution projects. By working with the involved Earth. We will be encouraging the use of drones, LiDAR systems, and other digital methods and IoT systems for digital monitoring and verification of the nature-based solution projects. This not only increases transparency, but it also increases efficiency and cost savings, the use of this digital MRV system. We are working with Trafigura, which is one of the big commodity markets, and they are willing to support Pakistan in the development of carbon market system in the country. So the project is here to contribute to carbon markets development by collaborating with the world leaders in this.
Yes, sir. I'll come to you again. With a couple of minutes. We have been joined by Mr. Sanjay Vashist, who is the Director Climate Action Network South Asia. So, sir, how do you see the regional's perspective on COP29 reflections and how COP29 will affect the global, South negotiations on that? Yeah, over to you.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to speak here. Acknowledging presence of Ma'am Romena. We interacted a lot during COP. Kaka Khel sir, very good friends, Abid Bhai, Bilal Bhai, and Shafkat Bhai, and other friends. I saw Zainab also in the conference. I think let's look at what we aspire to achieve from COP29, and then what are its implications in terms of the outcomes. I think one, certainly we termed it as a finance COP. Everyone was hoping that unless finance is resolved, the ambition cannot be unlocked. And ambition in mitigation, ambition in adaptation, and loss and damage also. One of the major concerns for everyone has been that in spite of all the commitments made during Paris Agreement and then later on the NDC 1 update, we are still heading towards 2.7 degree temperature goal, which is really alarming. 0.5 degree has really caused havoc. So imagine what 2.7 degree will do. Considering that every time ambition is not being put forward by NDCs because there is no money available, or if monies are being made available, that is recycled money from ODA, no new and additional or predictable monies available. So finance COP and the posturing by most of the developing countries was that we need around 1 trillion. And these figures basically came from need assessment reports that were submitted by developing countries to UNFCCC, how much money they need for adaptation and mitigation. And the total was in trillions, not at all in billions. Billions would have been inefficient anyhow. And then CSOs also demanded, Climate Action Network, we also demanded that it need to be 1 trillion, but should be grants, because that would be core money, and then that money can act as catalyst and can mobilize more trillions in the form of investments and or private finance. So certainly 1 trillion in grants need to be there. But then the political reality was different. The fact that President Trump is going to take over next month, and the US will go back on its commitment so far, may withdraw from Paris Agreement and UNFCCC. So political reality was completely negative or against the any progress in COP. Then even EU was in negotiations without any number. And that was a problem because of the fact that two leading countries in EU, France and Germany, both are going through political crisis. We know what has happened in France recently, where Prime Minister lost its motion of confidence. And then in Germany, the midterm elections has been called in February now. So government is in minority. So certainly they were not ready to put any number on the table. So EU was without any number. And thus, even if trillions were demanded and required and everybody understood, most of the developed countries were not in the position to propose any number. It's a miracle that they proposed 215 billion and then later on 3 billion later on. Otherwise, even those numbers were not expected. And the whole 2 weeks we kept on negotiating that, okay, how the money need to be accessed. But nobody knew that how much money need to be accessed. So ultimately 300 billion has been agreed. Another challenge to the COP was the political statements made by Azerbaijan leadership. They made a statement in the first week that oil is a gift of God to the countries. which is completely against and below the belt on climate negotiations. And then, of course, diplomatic relations of Azerbaijan with few countries were not very good. So keeping that in mind, the ground was not right to aim for very progressive agenda. And thus, what we got, we heard it from all colleagues, the global stock take. Now NDCs will start working on NDC 3, and NDC 3 need to be updated on mitigation, adaptation, and loss and damage. And that's where I think this is for the regional question that you have put to me, what needs to be done. I think within South Asia, enough of energy efficiency, renewable energy, I think we are going towards it. We have to understand that the business as usual will not work, not only in terms of fossil fuel uses, but also in terms of how we are consuming. So certainly when we speak about that fossil fuel need to phase out, and then we should have renewable energy, we should also talk about the wasteful consumption that need to be curtailed down, and sustainable consumption and production should reflect into nationally determined contribution of South Asia, because COP29 is not going to put in any money or not significant money that developing countries can rely on. So second part is that we need to have our own finance sources, innovative sources to be mobilized. And that will actually make us free from any obligation to the global community. We don't have to report this to global community. Let them mobilize and put money to developing countries. But within South Asia, it's our people who need to be saved, and we need to mobilize money from innovative sources. And many countries have been able to do that very successfully. Taxing fossil fuel is one. Taxing aviation sector is another one. Not significant. It could be a cess, and that could be done. I think billions has been mobilized in India from coal cess. That's one example. Lot more has been mobilized, is being mobilized in Bangladesh and Sri Lanka also. Pakistan also has a huge potential to mobilize billions that can be used to, to embrace climate solutions. Second major issue is, I think all South Asian countries, including Pakistan, need to decide whether you would like to be a fossil fuel economy or not. If not, let's start investing now. That doesn't mean we are saying that let's stop fossil fuel investment from today. No, that will take some time, gradual phase out. So certainly fossil fuel economy need to be converted into a renewable energy, and that would require not a technological shift, but a transformation. So certainly we should demand that there should be an international agreement who will help developing countries to move away from fossil fuel and adopt energy transition in a justice form. Justice would mean leaving no one behind. We cannot leave anyone behind on adaptation. Basically, when disaster hits, we have to make sure that everyone is protected. Similarly, when transformation is taking place, for some it will be a very negative development. For many, it will be positive. So for those it is negative, we need to make sure that they also get benefited of the transformation and part of the transformation also. So that's the one, and that is why we have been talking to government of Pakistan on fossil fuel treaty. I think we are not saying let's commit fossil fuel phase out through treaty. All we are saying is, hey, we need an international treaty or an agreement which helps progressive nation like Pakistan who want to move away from imported fossil fuel and who want to embrace new technologies. But we need all the support to develop
Yes, thank you so much, Sanjay.
India, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka. Yeah, I'll stop here. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for highlighting the South Asian role and on the fossil fuel treaty. And of course, we should have a collective stance for the COP30 as well. Thank you so much for joining us. And now I would move towards Ms. Sadia Satri, who is the gender climate expert at STPI. So how do you see the gender considerations to be mainstreamed in the Pakistan climate negotiations and strategies? And also, how could it be effective and more inclusive for the COP30 as well? Yeah.
Thank you so much, Saliha, and everyone to join us for this important session. So I was listening to the speakers since morning. One thing which I felt missing when we talk about the gender as a cross-cutting theme, I haven't heard
from my panelist on anything on gender, like we are taking it as a cross-cutting theme. So we are from the Pakistan, where if we see the gender equality ranking, Pakistan ranks every year below in gender gap index report. But one positive thing which we have seen in COP29, our two females were representing Pakistan, political lead and the technical lead were women, Miss Ramina and Miss Aisha was there. So this one can say that there is a hope that we can achieve the gender equality challenges and the climate change challenges. And we are from the country who produce a female prime minister. So there is a hope. But coming to the COP29, where we can see that we have celebrated the gender day on the very second last day of COP, which is again, you can see like the global commitments toward gender equality or promoting gender in climate action. So on COP29, countries adopted the enhanced Lima framework, which is the framework emphasized on the gender desegregated data, capacity building, and women participation in decision making. This is the enhanced version of the Lima framework, which has been adopted at COP20 in 2014. So we do have a climate change gender action plan in Pakistan, which were launched in 2022. This framework aligns with the global Lima frameworks, but now when we are updating our NDCs, we can enhance and we can update the climate change and action plan, which we can enhance the mechanism of monitoring and accountability to the track progress effectively, securing the dedicating funding and gender responsive initiative, which is these are some areas which are missing our existing climate gender action plan. And we can promote the active participation of the marginalized group in decision making process. So now, as you know, we are going to celebrate the Commission of Status of Women. Like these are almost 3 decades of Beijing Declaration. Most of the countries are compiling their progress. Pakistan have already produced their report to the Beijing Climate Action and Beijing Declaration, in which the report emphasizes the critical need of integration of gender perspective into the climate action, recognizing that women are disproportionately affected by climate change and calling for policies that empower women at the key stakeholders in climate resilience efforts. So I'm not coming to the intersection of gender and climate change. We all are aware of that, but we can adopt some of the best practices from existing countries who already have submitted their BTRs and their NDCs, as Brazil have already submitted their NDCs and they are using gender as a cross-cutting theme in NDCs. And we can see the best practices from other countries. When Ghana was updating their NDCs, they have adopted the gender analysis and they initiate the capacity building program of main ministries for the staff, that so they can have a better understanding of gender and climate change. So when we are updating our climate change and we are adopting COP29 Lima framework, we are going to update the gender climate action plan at COP30. So some of the best example we can adopt from the countries and we can inbuild in Pakistan's NDCs, and which by doing so allocating the fund under the new NCQG goals, there should be a certain amount for the women-led initiatives to promote women from the local government sides, and already promoting the gender parity in climate decision making. We should have women on the decision making on the all technical groups so they can give their perspective. And lastly, our policy should align with the broader way of SDGs as a cross-cutting themes.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sadia. And of course, this time at the Pakistan Pavilion, we had women representation, both Ms. Ramina and Ms. Aisha. They have done a wonderful job on the climate negotiation. So that's a wonderful fact on that. So I would welcome Mr. Honorable Justice Mansoor Ali Shah. Thanks for joining us. And now moving forward from one woman to another woman, I would request Ms. Atika Mir that how do you see the role of private sector on NDCs and on the climate action reflections from the COP29? Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much for the opportunity to present the business sector here. Thank you everyone for, who's spoken so far. And even though I did not attend the COP, but, I feel as if I've been able to, understand the key takeaways which happened at COP29. So I represent Nestle Pakistan, and Nestle has globally committed to become a net zero company by 2050. On the road to that milestone, we have two major, milestones in between. One is 2025, by which we have to reduce our emissions by 20%. And I'm happy to report that Nestle Pakistan will, inshallah, achieve the 20% reduction by the end of 2024. And in 2025, we'll overachieve the target that we've set for ourselves. In 2030, we plan to halve our emissions. And I'm glad to report that we've already finalized a roadmap to halving our carbon emissions by 50%. So, we had a global delegation from our headquarters who attended COP29. And it was really heartening to see, and that is what, I've heard from my global team, that it was very heartening to see that the businesses were also taken seriously at this COP. The language was also closer and more inclusive for businesses. So in addition to, Pakistan being seen and women being seen at the COP29, businesses were also really seen, and they were recognized as a major stakeholder when it comes to reducing the impacts of climate. So Nestle, our roadmap depends on the kind of operations that we have in a certain market. In Pakistan, because we have a big dairy business, and that is where most of our raw material comes from. So agriculture and livestock is something that is the cornerstone of our strategy when it comes to carbon reduction. And when you're debating NDCs for next year, I would urge you to also consider livestock and agriculture as one of the targets that we should, as an agriculture country and a country which has a lot of livestock, it's something that, we also need to work on. We may say that, we don't even contribute we contribute less than 1% of the emissions. But if we have an opportunity to, cut the carbon emissions and work on mitigation rather than adaptation, I think that will be one key win. And if you work on agriculture, it'll also have a positive impact on, let's say, the smog challenge that we're seeing. So for Nestle Pakistan, I'm speaking for Nestle Pakistan. So next year, inshallah, we're planning a campaign in which we will encourage all the farmers around our areas of operation to give their crop residue to us. So we have a factory in Kabirwala, and we've put up a biomass boiler there. And for that boiler, we use crop waste as fuel. It helps us reduce 10,500 tons of carbon dioxide. If you want to, sort of quantify, it's around the carbon emissions of 2,400 cars per annum. So we've taken that out of the environment, and we're planning to also install a second biomass boiler in our Sheikhupura factory, which is going to be a bigger of a bigger capacity. And then going forward, we also have a focus on regenerative agriculture, so minimizing tillage, covering the crops with crop residue, increasing biodiversity in the soil. All these will, inshallah, help us get to our own targets of halving our GHG emissions by 2030 and then inshallah reaching net zero by 2050. But even as a country, as I said, I think it's very important that we consider the contribution of livestock and agriculture, which according to estimates contribute to 41% of Pakistan's emissions. So that's my submission. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ms. Hatika, for highlighting the private sector role in climate action. And moving forward towards our last speaker, Ms. Sobia Becker from GIZ. That ma'am, if you could please highlight some of the, like we are about to submit our 3.0 NDC. So how do you see the outcomes of COP29 are aligned with this, our upcoming NDCs? Yeah, over to you.
Thank you very much, Salia. Assalamu alaikum and a very good afternoon to everyone. I would also like to join the other colleagues who have appreciated the singularity of vision and purpose that the Honorable Coordinator as well as Secretary Climate Change have shown at this event. And as always, my thanks to Dr. Abid Suleri and his very talented, capable team at STPI for all of their contributions. And this is a very important event. Salia, that's a very good question, but if you would allow me to digress for perhaps just half a minute. One of the most important things is that we had a very strong showing at Baku. There have been significant lessons that have been learned at Baku, but now we need to look to the road to Belém and see how we're going to take these multilateral processes actually work for us as we look to COP30. Hamza spoke about zooming out. I would like to speak about zooming in, because I think this is now a time where we have to look at the trees and not just look at the forest, because the forest we know. And I think it's also quite important that we understand that, yes, there are multilateral processes, and yes, you know, there's a 300 billion figure, and there are many other figures in the room. But the whole point is that how do we make all of this work for Pakistan, and how do we lay down the conduits for effective action in this country? And when I talk about this, I can give you a very concrete example. It was the dedication of Romina, and it was the dedication of Secretary Climate Change, which helped us unlock 7.5 million euros of unconditional finance. There is a lot of money available in the system. The point that we need to examine as we look to Belém is how do we increase the absorptive capacity of national systems to be able to take all of this money? Because, you know, demanding money is one thing, but the more important part of this equation is when you get this money, when you know where the sources of money are, how are you actually going to bring it home, and how are you actually going to mobilize it? So if we look to, it's a continuum, right? You have mitigation at one end, then you have adaptation, you have risk transfer, and then you have loss and damage at the other end of the continuum. And for this entire continuum, you have sources of funding that are available for Pakistan. And Germany, I speak on behalf of the Pak-German Climate and Energy Partnership. For colleagues that might not be aware of the partnership, this represents all of Germany's investments in Pakistan. And at the present time, our portfolio exceeds 500 million euros. A lot of that is grant in the form of technical assistance and financial assistance. And then we also have concessional finance. And this doesn't include, by the way, the 7.5 million that I just mentioned under the nitric acid climate action group, or the fact that Germany is one of the biggest donors to the Global Shield, the single biggest donor to the Global Shield. So there is a lot of money in bilateral and multilateral processes that is available. At COP29, Germany's commitments come actually quite almost close to 1 billion in the sense of the money that it has put down to the NDC partnership for strengthening Pakistan's NDC. This is something support that Pakistan should actively leverage. There is 20 million euros for the global carbon pricing challenge, which will be directed via the World Bank. There is a significant amount of money that Germany has pledged for adaptation. And there's a mitigation action facility. So there is a lot. But the problem is, how do we get the current state that we're in to the next level of maturity? 2025 is going to be a watershed year in the sense that you have the global stocktake. It would make a lot of sense for the three conventions actually to be updated. You have the convention for biodiversity. So let us update the national biodiversity strategy and action plan. You have the CCD. Let us update that document as well. And then we have the CCC, which obviously is part of the global stocktake, which I know is in Arif's very capable hands, but this is the NDC 3.0. And then to define where we're going to track the finance. And we also need to loop in the private sector because private sector's affirmative action is going to play a very strong, or should play a very strong role. And Atika just highlighted some of the things that Nestle Pakistan is doing. But when we speak about the framework and also the legislative framework in this country, which Justice Hassan highlighted very ably in this morning, we need to start looking at, for example, the reporting frameworks to ensure that the private sector is bringing in climate finance, is using finance to support communities, to support affirmative action, and they're also reporting against it. So let us take a closer look at ESG sustain. Let us see how we're going to have a more responsible private sector. And then let's also examine very closely how the NDC's targets will be cascaded down to industrial sectors, because they have a responsibility since a lot of the emissions actually also flow from the private sector and the energy sector as well. So there's we heard this morning about a curate egg. So this is the good part of the egg. Next year is going to be very positive, and we have to work now for Belem. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sobia, for the good part and for the commendable role you are highlighting from the GIZ side. And we are happy to announce that, from the start of the day, we had a discussion on the key outcomes of NDC's actionable steps that Pakistan could take, and also what will be the way forward for the Pakistan engagement at COP30. And also, I'm happy to announce that from these recommendations, policy recommendations that coming out of from the experts, we are making an advisory group of climate experts who work on with us to convert these recommendations into actions, and that would be a way forward from us. And now I would request Dr. Abid Qayyum Saleri for the whole summary that we actually took place for this event. Yeah, please, over to the podium.
Thank you, Saleh. First of all, let me formally welcome Justice Mansoor Ali Shah Sahab for joining us, sparing time. I know he was busy at Federal Judicial Academy, but you could see the involvement of Pakistan judiciary in climate issues. So in the morning, we were joined by Justice Jawad Hassan and Justice Adnan Chaudhary of Sindh High Court. Both of them, they were very, very kind to come and share their perspective. For the concluding part, we have Justice Shah Sahab with us. And in summarizing, I'll start by what you very ably pointed out in Baku, that climate justice is about climate finance, and climate finance is climate justice. And I think this is what we have been discussing since morning, looking at the outputs of COP29, some of them that disappointed us, but then looking at the glass half full, we know that this multilateral process, it had to continue. And we also know that it is in our best interest to remain fully involved in this multilateral process. Otherwise, unilaterally or bilaterally, we will not be able to get any climate justice. And that's what at least the civil society organizations of Pakistan, they feel that it may look at a weak deal, but to me, a weak deal is better than no deal at all, especially in multilateral system. So NCQGs, they are discussed. One of the recommendation that came from the group was that we also need in the future rounds, not only the climate change scientists, but also the climate finance experts who can look into the financial nitty-gritty of what is being proposed, especially the impact of inflation when it would dent the whole pledged or promised money. The second was about geopolitics. And I think with the US anticipated departure, we can take three approaches, either to follow the suit and all the countries, most of the countries, they also withdraw. Second, sit idle and wait for the political changes in US when the conditions are right, and then act. Our third is to fill in the leadership vacuum, and I think this is the third one, which is in our favor, that G77 plus China, they should step forward, fill in the leadership vacuum, and take a front seat on climate change negotiations. We also discussed about NDCs. Arif Kohir, who is taking a lead on NDC preparation, represented his work on NDCs. Justice Jawad Sani gave us a historical perspective, starting from Rio 1992 till today. We had representations from private sector, from INGOs, from civil society actors, and my STPI colleagues. So the recommendations are being compiled. They would be posted on our website, and they will be shared with your esteemed office as well as all other stakeholders. One thing that was common in most of the interventions here was acknowledging the role, positive role, that Ministry of Climate Change and Environmental Coordination and Madam Coordinator, they played in taking Pakistan's posture as well as Pakistan's stance forward in this COP, and it was highly commended. So with this, I'll give the floor back to my colleague. I think Madam Rumina would like to formally welcome Shah Saab, and then we'll request Shah Saab for his final words.
Once again, Assalamu alaikum and very good afternoon. Although there's so much, I have said it in the morning. But I think जो सबसे ज़्यादा खूबसूरत बात है वो यही होती है कि दिल की बात दिल से कहना और खुले दिल से कहना, और अपनों के बीच में जो है वो एक दूसरे के जो वीक्स और स्ट्रेंथ, आपकी जो स्ट्रेंथ है, आपकी जो वीकनेसेस है, उनको लेके चलना, दैट इज समथिंग वेरी नाइस. एंड आई थिंक दीज डायलॉग्स आर द वंस जिनसे आप बहुत कुछ और सीखते हैं. और आई रियली अप्रिशिएट द नेम द रिफ्लेक्शन ऑफ द कॉप. जैसे सुबह मैंने बताया, बट आई जस्ट फॉर्मली वांट टू से वेलकम एंड थैंक्स टू जस्टिस मंसूर साहब, because when I joined that time, of course, जो एक climate change के हवाले से सर का काम है, और जिस तरह से it's something which is very, very much close to his heart. And I really, of course, we not only appreciate, of course, that is also a great guideline as well for everyone. And I think अगर हम सब इसी तरह passion के साथ और strength के साथ चीज़ों को लेके आगे चलें, तो चीज़ें बहुत आसान भी हो जाती हैं और support भी मिलती है. And honestly, for me, everyone's appreciations means a lot. But the thing, the way I know, we all know that how Justice Saab is strict as well in his point of views, और सही के साथ जिस तरह से, because of course that is एक उनका काम भी है, और I don't have the words आपकी उसमें कहने के लिए, लेकिन the appreciation which I got from his side. It's and this is nothing political. Please don't quote in someone in any other way. This is something, as being when I was being called in the Supreme Court and was being asked few questions and things, and that time I felt that, oh God, there's a lot needs to be done and from where to start. And that time when sir again and again talk about the COP and things, and when he came to the COP, and जैसे आज सुबह जस्टिस जवाद ने बात की हमारी जो एक सर ने जो है होस्ट की थी कॉन्फ्रेंस ऑन द क्लाइमेट चेंज, वहां पर जैसे उन्होंने अप्रिशिएट किया कि सुबह से हम शाम तक बैठे थे. From that, I've learned few things, and of course, I really wanted to say thanks कि वहां पर हमने बहुत कुछ सीखा. That how, जैसे मैंने सुबह भी कहा कि finance, COP या climate finance is something which is very important, but climate justice is more also important, because वो होगा तो finance equally आप लोगों को मिल सकेगा, opportunities हमें मिलेंगी, चीजें आसानी की तरफ जाएंगी. And जो किरदार उसमें इस दफा COP में सर ने अदा किया, मैडम जस्टिस आयशा ने, जस्टिस जवाद ने, जस्टिस मंसूर साहब की लीडरशिप में जिस तरह से पूरा लोग आए, और इंटरनेशनली कम्युनिटी जो है, इंटरनेशनल जजेस जो हैं, जिस तरह से वो वहां पर आए, I think that's a great pride for Pakistan, and this is one of its own kind, and I really want to congratulate and thanks. But the appreciation I got from your side, honesty, that means a lot. That really means a lot, because it's not me, it's all the teamwork, आपकी guidance, सबकी guidance, हर एक, मैं तो हर उस एक इंसान की मशकूर हूँ जिन्होंने हमारा साथ दिया. पाकिस्तान के पवेलियन, मैंने जैसे सुबह भी कहा था कि जहाँ पे 9 बजे शुरू होता था और रात को 9 बजे तक चल रहा होता था, दूसरे पवेलियंस में हैप्पी आवर चल रहे होते थे और हमारे पवेलियन में काम चल रहा होता था. And that shows the seriousness of Pakistan. And I really wanted to congratulate everyone, and especially I want to welcome you, because a lot we need, sir, more, because जो हम लोगों ने अभी जहां तक आए हैं, अभी उससे आगे बहुत जाना है, और उसमें हमें सबकी सपोर्ट चाहिए, सबका साथ चाहिए. और कहीं पे अगर कोई गलत करता है, हमें डेफिनेटली उसको बजाय, जैसे मैंने सुबह भी कहा कि बजाय किसी की टांग खींचने के, बेहतर है कि उसके साथ सहारा बन के खड़े हों और उसको मजबूत करें. एंड दैट वेयर द इंस्टीट्यूशनल स्ट्रेंथ बिकम्स, एंड दैट इज द थिंग आई बिलीव दैट इंटरनेशनल क्लाइमेट जस्टिस कॉकस जो है, जिसको सर लीड करेंगे इंशाल्लाह, that is something we are looking forward. And COP30 is going to be great, I think, where we all need to get together, and we all need to support. And with this, I just wanted to welcome you, sir. Not only you, the whole team of yours, Justice Aisha, Justice Jawad, and the way you have supported there. Here as well, आपकी जो judgments हैं, I think that is globally a great beacon for all the vulnerable community, for all the vulnerable people who are suffering from the climate change. And I think the coming future, the way forward and the roadmap is going to be great for all of us. Thank you so very much. Looking forward to hear from you.
Thank you, Ms. Romina, and definitely you have done a wonderful work at the Pakistan Pavilion at the negotiation side. You were at the forefront, and we truly acknowledge your work you have done at the COP, and it was a collective stance from all of us. Now, moving towards the end, now I would request Justice Mansoor Ali Shah, Supreme Court of Pakistan, for his special remarks. Yes, please, sir, join us here.
Assalamu alaikum ji. Thank you so much, and thank you for the praise by Madam Alam. Thank you so much. That's very kind. इतना हमने कुछ नहीं किया जितना आपने तारीफ कर दी. I prefer standing because there's a lawyer in me, and lawyers get to speak well when they stand. And when they sit down, they act as judges. They don't speak that well. So it's good to stand and talk about it. पहले तो ये था जी कि I must sort of once again congratulate Rumina on taking the judges to the COP. You see, I think Pakistan was the first country that had its own judges delegation to the COP, which is a first. And this happened last time, but not that fully. But this time it happened rather comprehensively. एक तो ये बहुत बड़ी बात हुई. दूसरा, ग्लोबल जजेस नेटवर्क जो एक है, जिसका मैं एक हिस्सा हूँ, वो लोग भी हमारे पवेलियन पे आए. And they realized that Pakistan is the only country जिसके judges COP पे आए थे. So today, मुझे जो बताया गया इन्होंने कि reflections हैं Baku to Pakistan. So I want to share my judicial perspective
कि हम लोग कैसे इस सारी चीज को देख रहे हैं. आप लोग experts हैं, and I'm sorry that I wasn't here. I missed out on some very valuable inputs that must have come, and I requested Dr. Suleri कि मुझे इसका कोई summary मिले. I'm not a climate expert. I'm just a judge trying to look at the human rights perspective intersection with climate change or climate justice. So, and this is a term which we think very proudly that the Supreme Court of Pakistan has also created in a way, the term climate justice itself. But so I want to talk about going to COP, coming back, and what did I feel was something that's very disturbing for me, and how could we at the judicial forum start rethinking about the way we are producing jurisprudence. Personally, there's a lot of change. मैं समझता हूँ अब आगे की judgments एक और तरह की आएंगी, because जो चीजें मैंने सीखी हैं बाकू से, उसमें perspective काफी change हो गया है. And I want to share some of the highlighting features जो भी हैं. But before I do that, I just want to digress a little. I heard the lady from Nestle, she's sitting next to, close by. So I just want to say that there is a, if Nestle could consider getting rid of the plastic bottles, that will be very helpful, because that's creating a lot of problem. Before Supreme Court kind of tells you to do it, so please do it yourself. Because they're very annoying, actually. You see all these glass bottles, I'm so pleased, actually. So maybe Nestle could move to glass, that'll be helpful. So that was just a side comment.
Sorry, ek add kar do you know glass bottles have a higher GHG impact than plastic bottles?
That I leave to the experts, but please, plastics se to hame bachaye. Achha, so moving on, so my perspective is purely judicial, ke judges or judiciary kaise ab dekh rahi hai sari cheez ko. I'll simplify it. At the courts, we realized that, you see, one big milestone was कि पहले हमारे पास cases आते थे environment के, जिसमें environmental problems होते थे. ये factory pollute कर रही है, वो लोग pollute कर रहे हैं, ये pollute कर रहे हैं. Polluter was right in front of you. And we would, under our environmental laws, would either shut them down or penalize them. So this was, at that time of the time, early 90s, this we labeled or coined as environmental justice. क्योंकि वो सामने polluter है, उसको बंद कर दें, और बड़ा simple था. All the international principles जो हैं sustainable development के, intergenerational equity के, public trust doctrine के, वगैरह वगैरह सारे हमने लगा के हम इस चीज को attend कर रहे थे. Localized domestic issue था environmental justice. Then the trend changes, and we realize that, wait a minute, now we have something bigger than environmental justice, and that was climate change. Something was happening which was outside the country. अब आप jurisdictional perspective से देखें, तो मैं Supreme Court में, High Court में बैठा हूँ, तो मुझे नजर आता है किसको मैंने notice करना है, किसको कहना है कुछ. यहाँ तो वो है ही नहीं. Polluter is not in the country. It is coming from outside. So total perspective changed. And we said, what do we do now? There's a paradigm shift. So that was climate change to us. And we said, come on, now what do we do? So we would not mitigate, because we don't, I mean, as rightly said earlier, हमारा तो इतना pollution है नहीं, it's a very negligible amount. But what the problem was that how do we adapt? So having said that, we started realizing that the canvas of environmental justice, when we move on to climate justice, changes totally. Now it's a very multi-sectoral problem that a judge has to face, unlike a judge sitting in Europe and global north. The global south judges have a more onerous task, because इनका तो बड़ी multi-dimensional issue adaptation. Mitigation तो बड़ा आसान है, इसको कम कर दो जी emissions को. लेकिन climate justice और फिर हमारे context में climate justice, जो adaptive climate justice है, would be very different. So I wanted you to appreciate the fact that the canvas totally changed. And we started looking at the extreme weather events, and we saw there were intensive droughts, there were water scarcity, severe fires, rising sea levels to flooding, melting of polar ice, catastrophic storms, biodiversity ki decline. So a number of things started happening, and we started looking at, we had to look at multi-sectoral issues. We had to see agriculture, irrigation, housing, urban planning. ये पहले environmental justice में ये चीजें नहीं देखी जा रही थी. अब एक केस आएगा CDA की एक building के बनने का, automatically we'll say, wait a minute, is there a climate resilient development or not? So I'll start looking at even in urban planning, बिल्डिंग इशू जो हमने अभी एक रिसेंट जजमेंट दी सीडीए की कि इधर हाउसिंग इधर प्राइवेट सेक्टर में या रेजिडेंशियल सेक्टर में कोई बिल्डिंग बन रही थी, वी से वेट अ मिनट, आई मीन दीस आर द गाइडलाइंस यू नीड टू फॉलो. सिमिलरली व्हेन वी लुक एट लगारी केस और अदर केसेस, तो हम एकदम एक और पर्सपेक्टिव में चले जाते हैं. सो दैट वाज क्लाइमेट जस्टिस जस्ट एज अ बैकग्राउंड to where the judiciary is moving. And so we started looking at agriculture, health, food, urban planning, industrial licenses, technology. DG सीमेंट में हमने कहा सीमेंट प्लांट नहीं आगे बढ़ सकता, because केस ये किसी का नहीं था हमारे सामने. जब डीजी सीमेंट का केस आया, वो सिर्फ ये था कि जी हमें प्लांट को डबल करने दें. अब प्लांट किधर था? कलर कहार में. हमने कहा वाटर स्केर्स एरिया है, दिस इज नॉट अ क्लाइमेट रेजिलिएंट स्टेप. We brought in climate ourselves. Nobody pleaded this. Nobody argued climate in front of us. We said it's important to talk about climate in a water scarce country. And especially we said this is not a climate resilient move. And we stopped the extension of the plant and we said that's it. So I'm just trying to tell you how हमारी growth कैसे हो रही है at the judicial side. So we started looking at infrastructure, human resource, climate trafficking, disaster preparedness. इतना बड़ा canvas हो गया है climate justice का. अच्छा, अब क्लाइमेट जस्टिस में जब हम आगे चलते हैं तो हम क्या कर रहे हैं? We've been giving directions in Lagari, in DG Cement, stop this, you can't do this, please go ahead, do this. This is all we can do. So for example, in Lagari, we said कि climate change policy आपकी शेल्फ पे पड़ी हुई है 2012 की या 2002 की, आपने अभी तक कुछ किया क्यों नहीं? Go ahead and please implement. We can do that under the law. So we can push the government कि आपकी अपनी जो policy आप उसमें क्यों नहीं implement कर रहे on the basis of human rights. So please do it. So they started, we set up a climate change commission and they started implementing that. बताने का मकसद ये है कि हमारी directions क्या हैं? Please go ahead, do this. Please go ahead, do that. And largely it was adaptation. We're telling the government to go adapt, you see. And it was all adaptive directions. बाकू जाने के बाद ये पता चला है कि वेट अ मिनट, ये जो हम सारी डायरेक्शंस दे रहे हैं ये तो हवा में जा रही हैं, पैसा तो उनके पास है नहीं. अडेप्टिव कैसे डायरेक्शंस को इंप्लीमेंट करेंगे? हमें तो आगे कह देते हैं कोर्ट में कि सब ठीक हो जाएगा, नहीं कर सकते. दे नीड मनी एंड वी टॉकिंग अबाउट ट्रिलियंस एंड बिलियंस ऑफ रुपीस एंड हाउ डिड वी डॉलर्स एक्चुअली. एंड व्हेन वी लुक एट द फ्लड इशू जो हमारे सामने आया, तो 20 बिलियन का फिगर उधर हमारे सामने आ गया डॉलर्स का. एंड वी सॉ दैट नथिंग इज हैपनिंग. कहां से आएंगे ये पैसे और कैसे चेंज होगा? सो फॉर द फर्स्ट टाइम इन बाकू आई हैड रियलाइज्ड दैट climate finance is actually the new climate justice. You see, climate justice without climate finance is a joke for us. I mean, I practically, as a judge, think that if you do not have climate finance, बाकी तो सारी गपशप है. मतलब there is no way that I can talk about climate justice if there is no climate finance there. So climate finance to me now becomes the new human right. I think it is directly connected with right to life. It is directly connected with right to dignity. Because if you do not have finance and if you do not have climate finance, you cannot do climate justice. And if you do not do climate justice, you see how climate is affecting people. It is affecting the dignity of people because they have to migrate, leave their ancestral lands, go somewhere else. They can be totally, the droughts could take away their livelihoods, things like this. So right to life and right to dignity is directly connected with the right to climate finance. And I would now say, and maybe in jurisprudence that's going to be evolved soon, would be that climate justice is in effect climate finance, and climate finance is actually the new human right, which could be read into right to life and right to dignity. And unless we have that perspective, there's no way we can push for this money. And I'll just talk about where the money is going to come from. So at Baku, two things that I had learned. One was, which Dr. Adil Lajam so beautifully put it. He said, देखो, mitigation, the global north has totally failed to mitigate. ये बात ठीक, they have failed to mitigate. तो उसका क्या result हुआ? Adaptation का concept पैदा हो गया. अगर mitigation resolve हो जाती तो adaptation का तो वक्त ही ना आता. So failure of mitigation is adaptation. And failure of adaptation is loss and damage. So we are on a total failure trajectory as I see it, because उन्होंने तो ये भी कहा कि 29th COP हो चुका है, तो 29th तक तो हम अभी नीचे ही जा रहे हैं, कुछ हो नहीं रहा. So that was worrying because this is exactly what's happening. We are at the loss and damage area, and tomorrow your adaptation might disappear totally and everything is loss and damage. And the difference between the two is in loss and damage, you need money immediately. Whereas in adaptation, you can have a slightly long-term perspective. But in a loss and damage issue, you'll have to get the money quickly. So money is important. And second is that the North, as I understood it, Baku, and I might be wrong, aap log experts hain, I still have to probably understand this more fully, that the money is not coming. The financial organization, the global funds of the world are all there. It's all fancy conversation. But is the money actually trickling down? Is it really coming from there? So I started looking at this and I said, okay, how do we go tap the global fund? So the countries could be doing that, Paris Agreement, and he starts off with, Copenhagen, and you go down. I don't want to go into that, Cancun and all that. So I'm just saying there is Paris Agreement and there is the common but differentiated responsibilities, which say, yes, they are bound to do that. So there's a lot of material creating an obligation on the global North to give this money. But when we look at it on a legal perspective, and I look at it as a judge, first of all, my court has no jurisdiction to go telling, the global North to give money. So मेरा तो jurisdictional problem भी आ जाता है. Lekin how would Pakistan approach? How does it really work? And does it really trickle down? And has it trickled down so much so far? And then what if there is a dispute? Suppose I say that in the flood situation, my loss is 20 billion. And they say, so the committee there says, no, it's 5 billion. So where do I take the dispute? I don't know. Maybe there is a mechanism, but I don't know. I think it is kind of stuck in that kind of area. I find the whole structure to be a bit evasive and not available, maybe intentionally so, that we get to it rather late in life. So I don't know how the global network works and how many claims have we filed as a country and how much money is coming and what about the discussions and the conversations in this regard. That's one thing. Maybe it's lack of my understanding and knowledge, but I find it to be a very uphill task. Then I look at the local climate fund, and it's no disrespect to anybody. I think Ms. Rumina Khalid is doing amazing work that she is, but do not take it that I'm criticizing, but I'm just saying, understanding my own country, because the case came up before the Supreme Court and somebody said in a public interest litigation कि जी ये authority नहीं बनी हुई अभी तक, कि 2017 का act है, अभी तक तो authority इसके नीचे नहीं बनी. So then they went ahead, and I think now the case is not before us. हम जरा गैर आईनी बेंच के हैं, वो आईनी बेंच वाले सुन रहे हैं, तो उसमें वो बताएंगे कि बनी है कि नहीं. लेकिन बताने का मकसद ये है कि the authority was then, we pushed the government कि 2017 का law आया हुआ है. The apex authority in the country that has to deal with climate change is not there. So मतलब जरा अजीब लगता है कि इससे बड़ा existential threat नहीं है पाकिस्तान को, और authority नहीं बनी, तो फिर authority का कोई काम शुरू हो गया. But more importantly, within the authority, within the act, there is a requirement under section 12 कि आप climate change fund बनाएंगे. और fund बन रहा होगा, I'm sure. I'm not criticizing, and I'm very supportive of what she's doing. So I'm not saying it in that sense, but I think we need to have that fund. अब उधर फिर समझ नहीं आ रही कि कैसे fund चलता है. How do we approach the fund? How, suppose मेरा जमीन drought से खराब हो गई, where do I go? How do I go? I mean, excuse my ignorance, but I don't understand. Where is the rule? How do I apply to the fund? Who applies to the fund? What if the fund says no? Is it really connected to climate change? I don't know. I'm a farmer. I will articulate this point कि ये तो climate change से ही मेरा फसल खराब हुई है, पहले तो इसको क्रॉस करना है ना, फिर इसको क्रॉस करने के बाद मैं कहता हूँ जी मेरा 100 रुपए का नुकसान हुआ, वो कहे नहीं 100 नहीं 10 रुपए का. ये कौन फैसला करेगा, कैसे होगा? I don't know how the climate finance actually trickles down, and we talk about fundamental rights, right, looking into your eyes and into your face of Article 9 and Article 14. So वो उधर मैं जरा गड़बड़ हो जाती है, and I don't understand how to take it further. So that's where it also gets stuck. So then one thinks of कि private sector को कुछ move करना पड़ेगा, क्योंकि ये climate fund वाला concept तो नहीं चल रहा है. In one of the court hearings, we also asked them कि भी recent budget में आपने कोई climate के लिए मुख्तस किए हैं पैसे, तो वैसे ही नहीं, उन्होंने कहा नहीं हमने कोई climate fund के लिए कोई पैसे नहीं डाले. तो हमने कहा अच्छा इससे बड़ा तो threat ही कोई नहीं, तो क्या डालते रहे आप पैसे, किधर भेज रहे हैं? तो हमें पता है पैसे किधर जाते रहे. लेकिन सवाल ये है कि ये चीजें ठीक नहीं है. अब इस तरह अगर सिलसिला चलता रहेगा तो एक अब नई टर्म आ गई है climate apartheid. So अब फिर तो हम बहुत फर्क आ जाएगा ना, एक तरफ नॉर्थ हो जाएगा, एक तरफ साउथ हो जाएगा, और ये बहुत सी ज्यादा हमारा गैप बहुत बढ़ जाएगा. सो हम क्या करें? तो फिर अब मेरे ख्याल एक रास्ता जो मुझे अभी रिसेंटली हमने देखा कि इस्लामिक फाइनेंसिंग के बारे में भी बड़ी इस्लामिक क्लाइमेट फाइनेंस की भी बातें हो रही हैं, और उस पर बहुत से मलेशिया में, इंडोनेशिया में, आई डोंट वांट टू टेक यू थ्रू सुकूक बॉन्ड्स वगैरह इशू हुए हैं. इज दैट अ वे टू गो फॉरवर्ड? आई एम नॉट अ फाइनेंशियल एक्सपर्ट, बट समथिंग हैज टू बी डन डोमेस्टिकली, मे बी एट द प्राइवेट सेक्टर, टू लुक एट दिस एस्पेक्ट, वरना तो ये एक प्रॉब्लम होगा. अब हम क्या कर सकते हैं एज अ कोर्ट? देखें, ये जब भी अगर फाइनेंस, पहले तो ये बहुत बड़ा प्रॉब्लम है कि फाइनेंस मूव नहीं कर रहा. वी वांट टू पुश दिस, दैट दिस, जहां से हमारे पास कोई आता है केस जिसमें हम पुश करना चाहें, मे बी हम गवर्नमेंट को बार बार कहेंगे कि आपने कौन से प्रोजेक्ट्स फाइल किए हैं, ग्लोबल फंड से कौन सा क्लेम किया है, कहाँ नेगोशिएशंस रुकी हुई हैं, क्या आपने किया है, ये हम पूछ सकते हैं इनसे. हम ये भी पूछ सकते हैं कि आपके अपने क्लाइमेट फंड में कितने पैसे हैं और कितने पैसे लोगों को आपने दिए हैं एडेप्टेशन प्लान के नीचे, आपने लॉस एंड डैमेज के लिए कितने पैसे मुख्तस किए हैं और क्या किया अभी तक. तो ये चीज हम इनसे पूछ सकते हैं. मिस्टर वीना वुड बी प्रिपेयर्ड टू आंसर दैट when we get to the court for that, but that is a separate issue. Now the question is that there has to be some sort of finance that we need to develop. There are a number of ideas, but I don't want to get into. आप लोग experts हैं, आप लोगों को ज्यादा पता है, और नेशनल अडेप्टेशन प्लान खुद से कह रहा है कि ये चीजें करनी जरूरी हैं. उन्होंने सेक्टर्स भी बता दिए हैं, उन्होंने कहा कि पैसे हमें लाने पड़ेंगे अगर करना है. और आप लोग नेबरिंग कंट्रीज मलेशिया, इंडोनेशिया, सऊदी अरेबिया वगैरह को देख सकते हैं, जिसमें इस्लामिक प्रिंसिपल्स भी ऑपरेटिव हैं, और प्रिंसिपल्स बड़े इंटरेस्टिंग है. और मैं तो समझता हूँ इस पे रिलायंस करना ज्यादा जरूरी है बजाय ग्लोबल रिलायंस पे. और मुझे इस्लामिक जूरिस्प्रूडेंस से और इस्लामिक प्रिंसिपल से मिलता है, लाइक ज़कात. ठीक है जी, ज़कात फंड जो है, फंड्स फ्रॉम ज़कात कैन सपोर्ट वल्नरेबल पॉपुलेशंस फेसिंग क्लाइमेट रिस्क्स such as disaster victims in impoverished communities. Then what about वक्फ? ये बहुत बड़ा कॉन्सेप्ट है वक्फ मुस्लिम कंट्रीज में एंडाउमेंट्स का, historically used for public welfare. Works can be structured to finance projects like renewable energy, water conservation, disaster resilient infrastructure. ये एक तरीका हो सकता है. Sadqa, voluntary charity, now encouraged in Islam to alleviate suffering and promote welfare. Why can't we channelize it towards climate? What about Sukuk bonds, which is happening, Sharia compliant investment? Vehicles can be issued to fund large scale adaptation mitigation projects. Similarly, so कुछ इस्लामिक प्रिंसिपल से भी हम चीजें ड्रॉ कर सकते हैं. इसलिए एक चीज मैं ज्यादा हाईलाइट करना चाहूंगा, और आप एक्सपर्ट्स बैठे हैं और मुझसे बहुत ज्यादा समझते हैं. आई थिंक देयर इज नो वे वी कैन मूव ऑन क्लाइमेट फाइनेंस इफ वी डोंट हैव अ सेंस ऑफ क्लाइमेट साइंस, because it is so deeply rooted. I think the whole structure of climate finance stands on climate science. I, as a judge, want to understand climate science. I think we all need to understand climate science. There's no way you can promote a case of climate finance unless there is a understanding and a good grip and a handle on climate science. And it is happening in other countries. You know, also satellite imagery, climate models, and emission tracking technologies are all used to measure effectiveness of funded projects, ensuring transparency and accountability. Examples in Bangladesh, for example, climate finance has funded flood resilient infrastructure based on hydrological studies, reducing vulnerability in flood prone areas, Kenya mein, vagara, vagara. So all I want to leave the thought here is that unless we understand climate science, ये जो फंडामेंटल राइट या ह्यूमन राइट की मैं बात कर रहा हूँ क्लाइमेट फाइनेंस की, वो सतही रह जाएगा. उसके लिए बहुत जरूरी है दैट यू हैव अ डीप अंडरस्टैंडिंग ऑफ क्लाइमेट साइंस. सो हम क्या कर सकते हैं हमारे एंड पे, अब ये प्योरली जुडिशरी के साइड पे. फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल, इंटरप्रिटेशनली वी नाउ वुड लाइक टू थिंक ऑफ क्लाइमेट justice and finance as a human right. That's one. The other is that increasingly we're thinking that the entire new concept now moves from climate justice to reparative justice, because these are reparations. You see, this money has to come to us. So the new terminology, as I see it, is reparative justice. And I would call North's obligation to give us money is the climate debt. See, this is seriously a climate debt, and we need to very boldly argue it that fashion. We're not begging them. It's not a begging bowl. They are supposed to give it to us. It's this is an obligation under the international agreement. So that's how we're moving. Now, if you talk about disputes that will arise, we're willing to go ahead and start developing ADR, green climate ADR. We need to think of alternative dispute resolutions for climate, and we're prepared to provide you with that. We're saying, okay, tomorrow if you have disputes in this financing, we'll create climate ADR, alternative dispute resolutions, which will help you mediate these climate disputes. We're also thinking that, yes, you can have climate arbitration, because that will be required. Sooner or later, there'll be disputes in these matters. We're also thinking of having climate courts, if need be, because that would be required. You need to urgently, quickly, expeditiously decide these matters so that people are suffering. If there's a loss and damage issue and you're stuck in court for 20 years, there's no way you can resolve that. So I think sooner or later, you can mark my words, you require a climate court in this country, because where will that dispute go, which requires immediate attention? And if it gets stuck in the regular court structure, there's no way you can address climate change, and you can not really come to that problem. And one last thing that I've been saying repeatedly is that when you're talking about global finance and the money not coming or coming, would be that on the lines of International Court of Justice, we need to have a global climate court. And I would urge the government also to raise this voice internationally. We have the ICJ hearing going on these days, but this has to now come of age, in the sense that they need to now have a global court which deals with climate, because where will the policing be done? Who is going to tell the global north to give me money? And without a policeman, nothing happens. And I think that is the misfortune, I think, and that's why the money doesn't really flow the way it should flow, because there's no policing. So I think a global court is required. In the end, I'll just end with a quote that I really like. It's by an activist from India. The earth is not a commodity to be exploited. It is a community to which we belong. And so that's how we need to look at it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. And we are now about towards the end, and you rightly highlighted the climate justice is climate finance and trickling down of climate finance. And also there is a need for climate court globally and locally as well. Now I would request Dr. Abid, Justice Mansoor to the group photo at the podium. Please join us here. Mr. Justice Jawad, Mr. Bilal Anwar, Ms. Sobia, Arif Kohir Saab, and Basit Gori, please join us here for the group photo. Ms. Romina as well. Sir, please join us here for the group photo. Also, the roundtable speakers, please join us here for the group photo. STPI team, please. Okay.
Yes, and we would also like to welcome the Chairman of Securities and Exchange Commission of Pakistan, Mr. Akif.
One can come up. Yeah.
And thank you, everyone. And please do join us for the lunch. It's outside along the lobby. Thank you.